boy was being hunted by monsters. In fact, he had just been reborn into this world, and now his village was under attack by the Lightning Tribe. He awakened as Shutra, a bastard prince with no power at all, in a world where strength is worshipped and the weak are despised without mercy. But Shutra became a genius after awakening the dragon body, in a world where strength reigns supreme, and now he will conquer his territory. The story begins with a young man rushing down the sidewalk. Ju In-gong was given this name by his parents in the hope that he would become someone important. Upon entering a shop, he is recognized by two men at the counter. One of the attendants confirms that he saved a copy of the pre-ordered game and shows him the remake's box, titled Night Saga Re. It is a fantasy game that narrates the great war between humans and demons. You can choose between the human hero, Locke, or the eldest son of the demon king, Zephyr Ragnaros. Both travel through a vast world, completing different missions. He has already finished the old version more than 10 times and knows everything about it. The new edition is the first to use virtual reality technology. At home, he walks to his gaming chair and carefully removes the small cartridge from the packaging. Sitting down, he adjusts the virtual reality helmet over his head and inserts the cartridge into the console. With arms crossed, he prepares for a long session. His initial plan is to play for only 8 hours, without overdoing it. Rays of bluish light envelop his body as the immersion is completed. Suddenly, his first vision is the ceiling of an unknown place. He wonders if he is really inside the game, since he didn't wake up in a bed. Then he notices something strange. His features are different. Terrified, he realizes he is in the body of someone he doesn't recognize. A deep voice comes from the door and asks if he is still sleeping. An orc enters the room and rushes him, saying the day will be busy. Impressed, the player praises the graphics, but the creature doesn't understand what he means. He soon realizes that he can communicate with the characters. The creature introduces himself as Karak and asks for the young man's name. Then he calls him Prince Shutra and demands that he hurry out. It is at that moment he discovers he is in the body of Ignas, the 9th son of the Demon King. With a hand gesture, he tries to open the status window and the screen appears in the air, displaying the character's information. He analyzes the attributes and notices that the values are low for someone of his position. Upon checking the skills, he finds 2 options that are brand new compared to the original game. Intrigued, he asks what the skill Protagonist Configuration Adjustment means. Karak calls him again from the door, insisting that he come out at once. Without arguing, he follows him out of the tent. Outside, the scene leaves him completely surprised. A small army of orcs is gathered in the camp, ready for action. Shutra asks the reason for the warlike atmosphere, but the guard tells him to stop talking nonsense. The creature explains that the mission is to eliminate these Scarlet Lightning bastards. His army shouts in celebration, and the boy despairs because there is no tutorial. At that moment, the Scarlet Lightning Orc tribe had started a rebellion. He needs to deal with the conflict alongside the 7th prince and the 8th princess. The young man's concern grows as the events unfold. He asks why they are taking only 10 people, but Karak corrects him, saying it is just a patrol. He finds the behavior of the prince strange, as he prefers to remain silent. With a simple gesture, the young man opens a holographic interface by his side. A mini-map of the region appears, and he decides to keep it active to make the way easier. While analyzing the image, he finds a secret path and suspects it is an event. Karak complains that the initial route would take forever. Shutra takes the lead and guarantees he knows a much faster shortcut. He follows the new guide through a narrow trail in the middle of the forest. They move forward, still suspicious, through the dense woods. The physical exertion leaves the young man breathless and covered in sweat. After much effort, they reach a clearing with a large stone gate in the center. The old, cracked structure stands out amidst the thick vegetation. One of the orcs asks how the prince found the place and if he might be a mage. Exhausted, the boy realizes the physical fragility of a level 1 character. Ignoring the question, he asks them to check if the doors can be opened. Suddenly, an intense golden aura explodes around the prince's body. He is startled by the sudden manifestation of power. A system notification confirms that the character has leveled up. He is incredulous upon realizing that he received experience just by walking. His attributes increased, and 2 additional skill points were also granted. The unexpected discovery leaves him pensive for a few moments. They call him to help open the gate, and he joins the group. He feels more secure knowing he is not alone on the journey. The special skill he possesses works as a kind of plot armor. The gate opens, revealing the entrance to a dark and mysterious cave. Karak comments that dwarves must have dug that place, but Shutra had no idea it existed. Inside the cave, the group finds a vast treasure of weapons and chests. The creatures celebrate the discovery, shouting that the dwarves left everything behind. While they collect the items, the prince observes in silence, arms crossed. When trying to pick up the strongest weapons, the system informs him that his level is insufficient. He decides to store the items in his inventory for future use. With a simple touch and the thought of taking it, the object is stored. The inventory system works in an intuitive and practical way. Observing the minimap again, the young man notices several red dots approaching. Startled, he shouts for all his companions to move away immediately. A reddish energy begins to form in the center of the group of orcs. The accumulated mass explodes violently, throwing the creatures away. Amidst the rising dust, a red-skinned warrior emerges. The general of the Scarlet Lightning tribe declares that he knew they would come this way. The enemy leader orders his troops to advance and kill all the invaders. The red warriors attack the recovering group with fury. The battle soon turns into a massacre, with the prince's allies falling one by one. One of the green orcs is hit and falls lifeless before the boy. Determined not to stand still, the prince tries to steal kills to gain experience. He runs toward an enemy who was already fighting another ally. With a jump, he delivers a blow using all the strength he has. To his surprise, the sword blade breaks upon hitting the opponent's shoulder. The red warrior slowly turns his head and stares at him with glowing eyes. Terrified, the young man turns and takes off in a desperate flight. During the run, he trips over a stone on the cave floor. He falls on his back and begins to crawl, trying to escape the danger. A system notification indicates that his health is in a critical state. The enemy approaches roaring, about to deliver the final blow. With his eyes closed, the prince screams, waiting for the attack that would end everything. At the last moment, Karak steps in front of him and blocks the blow. The orc guard yells for his prince to move immediately. Engaging in a brutal fight in the middle of the hall, the two warriors face each other. He watches with trembling hands, repeating that it is just a game. The experience feels too realistic, and he decides he needs to stop. He tries to open the menu, but no window appears. When searching for skills, he realizes he doesn't have any available yet. Confused, he finds no control options. There isn't even a button in the system to quit and exit the virtual reality. A terrible suspicion takes hold of his mind. Perhaps he is trapped in the game. In the distance, the last allied orcs are massacred by the enemy general. The leader of the red tribe concentrates enormous energy in his hand. He fires a beam toward the defenseless prince. It leaves the young man in complete despair, certain that he cannot die in that place no matter what. The attack hits him full force, opening a devastating wound in his chest. The explosion throws him backward with force. Fallen, he struggles to breathe as his vision darkens. The general approaches slowly, panting after the attack. He gathers energy to finish the job. The status screen displays the prince's HP dropping to 0, confirming his death. Seeing himself alone, the prince awakens in a dark and completely empty space. He looks around, confused, certain that he had been defeated by the orcs. Amidst the panic, he begins to wonder if this meant being dead. Suddenly, an intense golden light emerges in the center of the darkness. A mysterious voice calls him a predestined existence and commands him to conquer. An ethereal woman appears before him, telling him to enslave and then rule. Unable to react, the boy stands speechless before the apparition and the orders received. The brightness increases and envelops the prince's entire body. Time in the cave rewinds to the beginning of the battle against the red orcs. Once again, the enemy troops massacre his allies without mercy. From afar, the general observes the confrontation alongside his soldiers. The leader of the enemy tribe mocks the stupidity of facing them while outnumbered. He then orders his warriors to advance and eliminate everyone quickly. Next, he notices a strange light and wonders if that was an awakening. Before his eyes, the prince resurfaces enveloped in a golden aura. A system notification announces the acquisition of the telekinesis skill. Without understanding how, the young man realizes he has learned something suddenly. In his status, a new piece of information appears that leaves him surprised. Now, the character possesses the subclass Knight of Conquest. Infuriated, the enemy general orders his soldiers to kill him without delay. Karak, still alive, stares at the prince with an expression of total incredulity. The few remaining allies gather, shouting that he must not be harmed. Creatures form a protective circle around the young man to defend him. He stares at the broken dagger in his hand, while observing the status. The new subclass does not belong to any of the options from the original game. The mystery regarding the origin of that power leaves him intrigued. Suddenly, he thrusts the broken sword into the ground. Spells echo in his mind as if he had always known them, and he uses them to buff his allies. The skill's effect strengthens the warriors, making each one's strength overflow. Motivated by the newly acquired power, the orcs advance. One of the strengthened ones delivers a single punch and crushes the opponent. Now the creatures fight with renewed vigor, dominating the battlefield. In a short time, the tide turns, and the prince's allies take control. Incredulous, the enemy general watches as his soldiers fall one after another. To him, The entire situation seems absurd and inexplicable. His eyes search through the chaos for the source of that sudden power. Finally, the focus turns back to the prince, still glowing in gold. Enraged, the general summons 3 crystals and launches them at the boy. Facing the approaching attack, the prince shows no fear at all. Karak leaps forward to intercept the powerful spell. With the buff, he impels him into battle and screams for him to advance. Charging with all his energy, the orc warrior strikes against the enemy general. He tries to ask for a pause, but it is already too late. With a single precise movement, Karak finishes off the opposing general. The enemy's lifeless body falls to the cave floor, surprising his soldiers. The remaining warriors panic but are ordered not to flee. A system notification announces that the merits of victory belong to the king. 3 level-up notices appear before the boy. Surprised, the prince stares at the absurd amount of experience received. Karak stares at his own hand, still glowing, and wonders where that power came from. Seeing the smile on the prince's face, he suspects that he is the cause of it all. Back at the camp, the orcs celebrate the victory around the campfire. In the tent, the young man desperately searches for the logout button in the menu. He tries to stay calm to reflect on 2 possible hypotheses. The first is that a critical bug has trapped him inside the virtual reality. The second, as insane as it may seem, is that this is reality, not a game. Perhaps he was transported into the story, or to an identical world. Realistic scenarios and conscious NPCs reinforce this suspicion. Even stranger is the absence of any kind of censorship common in games. The idea of actually dying in that place terrifies him. Struggling to maintain his reason, he reminds himself that he was born as a privileged prince. Then Karak appears at the entrance of the tent, and he asks why the prince desires a practice duel. But first, he explains that he needs to know his level to prepare for the future. With that, he picks up a wooden sword to be able to train. Stating that there is no reason for concern, the orc guarantees he will go easy. The prince reprimands him for speaking inappropriately to a member of royalty. He demands to be faced for real, and moves forward to attack first. Karak raises his weapon, ready for impact. The initial attack fails, without hitting the target. The young man's sequence of attacks also causes no effect. It is like a small pebble fighting against a rock, simply depressing. With a single movement of his weapon, Karak throws him far away amidst the wind. Falling to his knees, the young man receives the concern of the orc, who reproaches himself for the strength used. Soon a system notification appears informing that the basic swordsmanship skill has been acquired. He wonders at what moment he managed to learn how to handle swords. Suddenly, a memory awakens, bringing clarity about how that world works. Just as happened with telekinesis, he realizes he can obtain new skills by receiving direct attacks. He suggests ending the training, but the leader interrupts and firmly refuses. With a confident smile, he declares that this was only the beginning. Shutra advances quickly, wielding his sword for a new attack. The prince's blade clashes against the orcs, scattering sparks with the force of the impact. Karak watches in surprise, realizing that his opponent's movements are much better now. He wonders why the boy seemed so clumsy at first, since no one improves that much all of a sudden. The swords clash again, and the sound echoes through the training field. Crouching down, the young man slides across the ground, maintaining total focus on his adversary. With a challenging look, he asks if his performance isn't half bad now. Then the prince questions the orc's level, who responds that he last checked it at 21. Shutra repeats the number in a low voice, reflecting on the information. A status window shows that his own level is 7, but he believes he can catch up soon. Unlike him, the people of that world need an appraisal spell to know their levels. Seeing one's own attributes and distributing points freely is a huge advantage. During the combat, the boy leaps toward his opponent with his sword raised. During the aerial attack, he prepares a precise strike against Karak. A thought about simply becoming stronger arises, but he discards it immediately. What matters, in fact, is being able to evolve much faster than the others. This story belongs to the demonic arc of the book, Night Saga. The plot follows Zephyr's journey to overcome his siblings and become the Demon King. Even with many events until the end, the essential part is his ascension to the throne. The decisive point is marked in the year 517, when Zephyr kills all his siblings to fulfill his objective. The mention of the word all indicates that he will also be killed, but since the current year is 512, there is still time. The priority now is to prevent this future, and the best way is to surpass Zephyr's strength. Karak finds him and asks what he is doing there, while the prince wants to know if something happened. He remembers an important meeting scheduled for today, leaving the young man confused. His guard rushes him, saying that everyone is waiting, but he seems not to remember the commitment. The two arrive at a camp surrounded by a wooden palisade. Sitting at the table, The prince lets out an awkward laugh before those present. Two figures in front comment, surprised, that he arrived early. The seventh prince, Chris Moonlight, asks him not to be so formal since they are brothers. The eighth princess, Caitlin Moonlight, explains that it is just out of politeness, as it is the first time they have met. Chris suggests that he call him just by his name, and the boy awkwardly agrees. They are the children of Elaine Moonlight, the fourth queen and leader of the lycanthropes, besides being one of the greatest sources of trouble in the game. 1 year before the massacre, a crucial event completely changes their destiny. Both end up dead at the hands of Zephyr and the other children of the Demon King. The tragedy is linked to a secret involving Caitlin Moonlight's birth. The truth is that the princess is an illegitimate daughter. Caitlin reprimands him for fighting without following the plan, and the young man tries to justify himself, saying he didn't expect to encounter enemies. The princess decides to inspect him to make sure he is all right. She approaches and checks for injuries, leaving him surprised by the unexpected gesture. The sister warns him to be more careful, reminding him that he is still the weakest among them all. Shutra apologizes. He questions the reason for her concern, finding it strange to see such closeness between the children of the Demon King. Chris also warns him that he will receive a serious scolding if he does something dangerous again. He internally questions if deep down his siblings might be kind. Ignace remains pensive, trying to process that whole unusual situation. A memory about the lycanthropes, known for mastering the use of aura, makes him reflect if he could also learn this technique, just as he did with other skills. He turns to his brother and says he has a favor to ask. With a confident smile, he asks Chris to hit him with a blow. The two react with expressions of pure shock at the request. The scene shifts from the sunny camp to a bleak landscape. Rocky mountains stretch under a reddish and lifeless sky. In the midst of battle, the demon general Bandal throws an enemy through the air with a punch. The chaotic field shows orcs facing an army of red-skinned demons. He twists his body and attacks several adversaries at once. Two demons advance to attack him. Bandal hits another enemy with a devastating blow that launches him far away. One of the soldiers manages to pierce the general's arm with a blade. Infuriated by the wound, Bandal glares at the enemy. The creature recoils in pure terror. He smashes the ground with force, releasing a shockwave that hits everyone around. He orders that no enemy be spared and promises a reward to whoever gets the most kills. The army of orcs advances in a fury, brandishing axes against their opponents. Successive explosions light up the mountainous battle scenery. Shutra finds himself alone in a dark and empty space, not understanding how he got there. A woman with long white hair and a mysterious gaze emerges amidst a golden light. The prince turns as he notices the formation of two shadowy silhouettes. He wonders who those figures are, as he doesn't remember them in the story of Night Saga. The woman from before appears right behind the boy, who stares at her suspiciously. Surprise and confusion are revealed on Shutra's face at the strange events. Suddenly, an intense golden light takes over the environment. Lying in a bed, the prince opens his eyes and stares at the ceiling, completely disoriented. He sits up and puts his hand to his head, trying to understand if it was all just a dream. Carrick appears by his side and asks if he woke up, making the boy scream in fright. Shutra recoils, startled on the bed, while the orc just comments that he looks fine. Carrick wants to know why the prince asked the princess to hit him and mentions that he kept mumbling afterward. Shutra observes himself, confused, as he notices a slight aura of power surrounding his body. A notification confirms the attainment of level 1 aura, and he celebrates finally being able to feel it. The guard asks if it is really possible to awaken aura just by being hit by it. The prince confirms, saying it's more or less like that. The revelation explains the sudden energy he showed against the Thunder Tribe, and Shutra admits that was exactly what he suspected. He asks if anything happened while he slept, and the orc confirms that it did. Karak informs him that the main force also defeated the Thunder Tribe, leaving the prince confused. Shutra believes he and his siblings were that main force, but the guard corrects him and asks if he doesn't know who was in command. The name of General Bandal is revealed, and the prince reacts with immediate shock. A memory of the game flashes in his mind. Bandal was one of the strongest, and also one of his favorite subordinates. Suddenly, a realization makes his eyes widen. If Bandal has not yet joined Zephyr, it means there is an opportunity. With a cunning smile, the young man decides he is going to recruit him before anyone else. He knows everything about the general, his preferences, rewards, and talents, thanks to what he remembers from the game. But he knows that the decisive point to win him over will be defeating him in a direct duel. Convinced that he can have him as an ally before Zephyr does, Shutra concludes that it is worth trying. With firmness in his voice, he declares that his first step will be to turn General Bandal into his new subordinate. In Caitlin's camp, A cry of surprise echoes through the tents. Shutra displays a sphere of energy to his siblings, who react in shock upon discovering that he reached the first level of aura expulsion in just one day. He smiles, finding the result expected, since he had invested all his points into the new skill. The choice was not rash, as aura improves physical capabilities and ends up being more useful than telekinesis. Chris still doubts that such a thing is possible, and asks if his brother's Gandharva race might have some influence. The eldest then wants to know if he can create a subterranean map, leaving the boy confused by the question. He denies it, but says he has a mini-map and asks for a pen and paper to draw what he sees. Outside, the military camp continues its normal routine. With the map ready, Chris praises him excitedly, calling him a genius while hugging him. Caitlin explains that, with the enemies defeated, they will be able to use the underground tunnels that the rest of the tribe is unaware of. Chris turns to his younger brother and states there is another task he needs to fulfill. The scene shifts to a landscape of green mountains under a sunny sky, leading an orc patrol through the forest. The prince asks if the mission is just to watch the area again. One of the soldiers comments that it's good to have reinforcements, and another replies that it is all due to their hard work. As they advance, the group encounters two hooded figures blocking the path. He recognizes his sister Caitlin and her attendant under the hoods. He asks the reason for the disguise, but the princess silences him with a gesture. Caitlin reveals that she is following him in secret to ensure his safety in case something happens. She states she will only intervene if there is real danger, so that the achievement is attributed to him. The other figure introduces herself as Sarah, the aide, and the prince greets her. The princess asks him not to worry about them as they will accompany him, and the young man agrees. The group arrives at the entrance of a dark and cold cave in the mountains. They enter the underground tunnel in a single file. One of the orcs questions why the caves are empty, assuming the dwarves took everything of value. He remembers the weapons found before, and Karak concludes they were not considered valuable. The patrol advances through the darkness of the cave, lighting the way with a torch. He notices a sound approaching, and Shutra confirms that he can hear it too. On the mini-map, several moving dots appear in their direction, confirming the presence of enemies. He accesses his inventory to prepare for the confrontation. A light spell potion appears, an item he brought specifically for this type of situation. He tells the guard to warn everyone to close their eyes at his signal. Both position themselves at the cave entrance, waiting for what is to come. Dozens of pairs of red eyes glow in the depths of the darkness. A swarm of stone spiders, monsters with paralyzing venom, surges out of the tunnel. Shutra yells for everyone to close their eyes immediately. He throws the light potion toward the approaching monsters. The glass breaks in the air, releasing all the contained luminous energy. An intense explosion lights up the cave completely. The creatures shriek in pain, disoriented by the sudden flash. He orders the attack, explaining that the spiders are useless when exposed to light. The orc troop charges in a fury, attacking the now vulnerable monsters. Each warrior cuts down the stone spiders with their sharp blades. The remaining group joins the fight, crushing the creatures with their axes. Shutra observes the battle from a distance, while the aura glows around him. A quick look at the map confirms that stone spiders always hunt in groups. On the drawing, a larger central point appears, indicating that every swarm needs a leader. He orders Karak to accompany him to defeat the boss, and the guard agrees. Both clear a path through the swarm while the other orcs continue fighting. They advance deeper into the cave, leaving the main battle behind. The duo finally finds a giant spider with multiple eyes, the leader of the group. The orc leaps in a fury, raising his axe to attack the creature. The blade hits the monster's head but bounces off with an intense flash, causing no damage. Karak is perplexed to see that his strongest attack was useless. The blade barely scratches the creature's exoskeleton, which is as hard as steel. He despairs, remembering that the weapon cannot pierce that shell. He knows the monster's weakness is fire, but he does not yet master that type of magic. The giant spider turns its attention to the orc, who recoils in fear. The creature towers over the warrior, preparing a mortal attack. He shouts for Karak to use fire, but the guard responds in despair, asking where he would get such a thing. A mysterious voice echoes, ordering Shutra to raise his sword. The prince's sword ignites in golden flames, leaving him astonished by the power. He can hardly believe he is wielding true magic. His sister Caitlin appears, revealing herself as the source of the spell, and asks if that is enough for the fight. The giant spider lunges with its fangs open to attack the boy. With the flaming sword in hand, Shutra turns and prepares for the confrontation. The prince stares into the creature's multiple eyes with a determined gaze. The creature delivers a powerful blow that makes the cave floor tremble and crack. With a quick leap, the boy dodges and prepares his own attack in midair. The special technique, Burning Blade, cuts through the enemy, leaving a trail of fire behind. The blade's flames completely envelop the giant spider, causing a fiery explosion. He notices the remains of the monster burning on the cave floor. A crackling golden aura surrounds the young man's body after the victory. Level up notifications appear around him as the energy strengthens him. A status window opens, showing that he has finally reached level 9. Caitlin approaches and asks about the strange light that emanated from him. He deflects the subject, saying it is like a blessing from his Gandharva heritage. His sister presses him about his skill in fighting those creatures, and he lies, claiming he read about them in books. Karak interrupts and draws the group's attention to something further ahead in the cave. They find a large metal door carved into the stone wall. The double doors open slowly, revealing a new passage. The team enters a wide stone hall lit by torches. Shutra looks at the floor with an expression of surprise and recognition. A huge glowing magic circle on the floor is identified by him as a city portal. The guard asks if he knows what that is, and the prince replies that he has a hunch. The pattern on the floor is recognized as being in the dwarven style. He recalls that when he played as the hero, he had seen some portals, but never a zephyr. He then deduces that injecting mana into a nearby orb should activate the portal. He turns to his sister and says it might be a portal, leaving her surprised. By the design, Caitlin agrees with the theory and suggests looking for inscriptions to discover the portal's destination. Karak calls the prince, pointing to letters carved into a plaque on the wall. Shutra and his sister approach to observe the inscription. The letters are recognized as dwarven characters, not the common demonic script. The princess replies that she cannot read dwarven writing when Karak asks. Sarah also confirms that she cannot decipher the text. Suddenly, Caitlin reads aloud, Gishka Mountains, portal number 2. She continues reading and discovers it is connected to portal number 3. Shutra is confused, not understanding how he is able to read dwarven writing. A system notification appears, informing him that he has acquired the dwarven language skill. Surprised, the young man realizes he just learned a new skill without even training. Incredulous, the bodyguard asks if he can really read that, and the prince confirms with a smile. His sister questions since when he has understood dwarven writing, and what else is written there. Shutra translates the bottom part of the plaque, explaining that it is necessary to infuse mana to activate the portal. He then asks his sister to try injecting some mana. She asks why he doesn't do it himself. He tries to justify himself with a lame excuse, saying he is still clumsy, and the princess eventually agrees to do it. Caitlin places her hand on the stone orb, which begins to glow with an intense blue light. The sphere of energy pulses with power as the portal manifests in the hall. Soon, a large holographic map of the Gishka Mountains emerges from the orb. It shows the current location and that of portal number 3, and the prince confirms that there must be dwarven tunnels there. Karak realizes this is an advantage, since the enemy tribe is positioned in front of the mountains, which would allow a surprise attack from behind. The princess decides to wrap up for today to discuss the new information with her brother. Back at the camp, the discovery of the portal leaves everyone surprised and excited about the new possibility. Chris embraces his brother with enthusiasm, calling him a true blessing to the group. The elder offers a reward, promising to grant anything the boy desires. Even while trying to refuse, the young man is pressured by his older brother's insistence. He ends up asking if he can make a somewhat irrational request, and Chris becomes even more curious. Shutra finally reveals his desire to learn the art of the beast god's fist. The surprise of the request leaves his brother completely shocked, taking on a serious expression. He explains that, because of his level, he still cannot use weapons properly, but martial techniques are different. The art of the beast god's fist is a powerful S-rank martial art, passed down only through the lycanthrope royal family. Seeing his brother's reaction, Shutra backs off and says he understands if it's a difficult request, pretending he already expected a refusal. To his surprise, Chris agrees to teach him, leaving the boy speechless. He clarifies that obviously he cannot pass on the family's secret techniques. Even so, he offers to teach the aura portion, and the prince asks, excited, if it is true. Smiling, the older brother asks if that is a good enough gift, but the young man remains silent. Shutra quickly gestures and guarantees it's nothing like that, saying the gift is absolutely perfect. Chris calls the boy's name to get his full attention. He then asks if from now on, he can consider him a true brother. The word brother takes Shutra by surprise, and he reflects on the meaning of that new bond. He also reflects on the weight of those words. With a slight smile, Shutra replies that he likes the idea of being brothers. Both shake hands, sealing the start of their new alliance. Chris and Caitlin look at their new ally with satisfied and confident expressions. He smiles back and suggests they work together from that moment on. A system notification confirms that a normal alliance has been established with Chris and Caitlin Moonlight. The scene shifts to a mountain range under a late afternoon sky. In the Scarlet Thunder Tribe camp, Movement remains intense between the tents. Two red-skinned warriors stand guard at one of the entrances. One of them comments in a mocking tone that no one would have come there without a reason. The camera reveals a figure kneeling on a magic circle while the guard mentions our princess. The prisoner is identified as the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade. A look at his attributes shows that charisma is lower than his other stats. Sitting in his tent, the prince notices that, unlike the other attributes, charisma now only increases by 1 point per level. He wonders why, remembering that in the original game, appearance and charisma were separate statuses. Appearance measured beauty, while charisma defined how pleasant a character was to others. He accepts the change, as his overall growth rate has been good so far. More importantly, he is about to reach level 10 and expects a major improvement. In the story of Night Saga, Zephyr and Locke gained a level in their unique skills upon reaching level 10. He believes the same will happen to him, but he is interrupted by Karak, who calls him from the tent entrance. He receives the news that everything is ready for departure, and the prince confirms their exit. Karak comments on the young man's good mood, but he denies that anything special happened. They leave the tent and join the army of orcs waiting for them outside. The troop is formed before their leader, ready to follow orders. With a confident smile, Shutra gives the command for everyone to begin the march. They travel toward a mountain range under a clear blue sky. The journey takes them back to the entrance of the rocky cave they had explored before. Inside the cave, orcs and lichens fight side by side against the remaining spiders. The troop advances, clearing a path to the large metal door at the end of the tunnel. Shutra's party reaches the portal hall, where others are already waiting for them. The eldest of the princes questions the lichen mages about the conclusion of the investigation. One of the mages, with wolf-like features, confirms that the portal is connected to the Eska River in the Gishka Mountains. He guarantees there are no problems, and that the dwarven construction is, as always, extremely durable. Chris smiles at the news and orders everyone to prepare to move forward. Both mages join their hands over the orb, channeling energy to activate it. The stone sphere glows intensely with a powerful bluish light. A large oval portal opens in the center of the room, showing a rocky landscape on the other side. Karak and the prince watch the scene with awe and admiration. Shutra can hardly believe he is seeing a real portal functioning before him. His sister rushes him, asking what he is waiting for to cross over. He runs to join the group, eager to discover what awaits them. As they step through the portal, the team emerges into a new environment surrounded by reddish rocks. He observes the rocky landscape, completely confused by what he sees. From the top of a cliff, the group spots a gigantic enemy camp set up in the valley. Chris confirms with satisfaction that, as expected, they found the main camp. He estimates about 5,000 troops and defines that the priority of the rear attack will be to destroy the supplies. The plan is simple. General Bandal will distract from the front, while the infiltration units burn the food depots. One of the hooded attendants interrupts, saying that something seems strange about the movement. Observing more closely, they realize there aren't enough troops in the camp, and wonder if an attack has already begun. A distant noise catches Shutra's attention, and he stays on high alert. Karak comments that the sound seems to be coming from a battle happening far off. Chris instructs the boy to focus aura into his eyes to see better. He concentrates, channeling his energy into his vision. Using the aura, he is able to see a fight happening in the distance between two groups. Caitlin recognizes the Thunder Tribe, but does not identify the other side. They are not General Bandal's men. Shutra notices that the scale of the fight is too small to be a confrontation between armies. His enhanced vision shows a white-haired figure fighting alone against several warriors of the enemy tribe. The fighter defends herself with ferocity, facing multiple adversaries at the same time. They watch in silence, and one of them comments that the fighters appear to be dark elves. Caitlin turns to her younger brother, who confirms the identity of the warriors and mentions that they ride drakes. He points to the battlefield and warns that the enemy troops are retreating. The tribe's fighters flee at high speed, raising the suspicion that their commander has been defeated. They remain confused, not understanding why the fight ended so abruptly. Shutra reflects in silence, trying to imagine what dark elves would be doing in that location. Back at the camp, the sun sets over the tents and the wooden palisade. A holographic projection of General Bandal appears, saying he heard they found the dwarven portal. He praises the prince's army and asks curiously how they knew of the portal's existence. Chris gives all the credit to Shutra, but the boy insists it was just a stroke of luck. Bandal addresses the ninth prince, guaranteeing that this time he will be properly rewarded at the Demon King's castle. He changes the subject and asks the general about the small confrontation that occurred in front of the Thunder Tribe's camp. He responds that it was likely the Dark Elves who joined the battle of their own volition. He questions if they weren't reinforcements sent by the castle, but Bandel explains that their plan to join the main army failed. The general's holographic image remains stable as he warns that there is a more serious problem. Chris asks what it is about. Bandel then reveals that the leader of the independent Dark Elf unit was captured by the Scarlet Thunder tribe. Shutra interrupts, curious, wanting to know exactly who this commander is. He responds with a grave tone that it is someone they all know very well. The holographic image flickers, and the leader's name is revealed. The sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade, their sister. The news leaves Chris and Caitlin completely paralyzed, with expressions of pure shock. The sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade, was the daughter of Sylvia Doomblade, the third queen and princess of the Dark Elves, as well as the twin sister of the fifth prince. Shutra remembered that in the game, Felicia was part of the fourth princess's faction, which had always marked her as an enemy in his memory. Her appearance at that moment raised the question of whether she was trying to interfere to gain some merit. Chris asked aloud if the Scarlet Thunder tribe even knew that the captured Dark Elf was Felicia. Through the hologram, Bandel replied that they had not yet been able to confirm that information. Shutra wanted to know the plan of action, and the general explained that there would only be a rescue if they were attacked first. He firmly declared that he had no intention of bowing or negotiating with them. He agreed and promised to gather more data before contacting them again, ending the call. When the holographic projection dissolved, the three were left alone in the room. Chris flashed a smile and commented on how their brilliant older sister was now a prisoner. Caitlin turned to him and countered that if Felicia was alive, they needed to rescue her, but her brother warned that it would not be easy. The princess argued that a rescue attempt could cause serious losses for the group. Even so, she grabbed his arm and insisted they needed to save her because she was the sister of both of them. He remained in silence, observing the situation with a serious expression. He admitted he understood the difficulty of the decision, but that they needed to consider the facts. He stayed quiet, merely following the reaction of the siblings in front of him. In a military camp among the mountains, the leaders gathered to define the strategy. Inside the tent, Chris stood at the head of the table and stated that the plan was simple. With a map in hand, he explained that as soon as General Bandal drew out the main enemy force, they would attack the camp from the rear. He announced that he would advance to the center of the base, while Caitlin and Shutra would lead their own squads on the mission. Shutra interrupted him to confirm if the objective was the rescue, and the prince nodded, adding that they would first burn the armory and the food depot. He determined that everyone should retreat immediately if the situation became dangerous, because they could not lose more lives for Felicia's sake. The princess reacted to her brother's words, but Chris cut her off and demanded silence, reminding her that he was the commander. Indignant, Caitlin shouted that Felicia was family, but he just stared at her without saying anything. He noticed that the seventh prince did not seem to have the slightest intention of rescuing their sister. Under the night sky, the attack operation began. The troops advanced through the mountainous terrain toward the target. With a commanding shout, the demon army set off with full force for battle. The order to annihilate everyone from the Scarlet Thunder tribe was reinforced. From the top of a cliff, they observed the enemy camp. From the high vantage point, he analyzed the layout of the tents gathered around a large central bonfire. Guards of the tribe patrolled the perimeter between the lit torches and the tents. He waited for the agreed-upon signal to start the attack, his eyes fixed on the target. Suddenly, large explosions hit the main force of the camp, marking the beginning of the first phase of the plan. The surprise offensive threw the warriors of the Scarlet Thunder tribe into total disorder. Advancing with his army across the battlefield, he led the offensive. He shouted for his soldiers to kill all enemies without hesitation. Far from there, Carrick asked Shutra why they were not moving yet, but the prince asked him to wait for the signal. In the center of the battle, orcs and demons faced each other in direct and brutal combat. The charge of Bandal's troops cut through the enemy defenses with full force. Surprised by the attack, the tribe's general observed the advance of the enemy forces drawing near. He fell silent for a moment, assessing the intensity of the offensive. Then, he gave the order to withdraw, and the troops began to retreat amidst the fire. From the top of the cliff, the Lycan prince watched the chaos spread through the camp as planned. Seeing the opportunity, Chris turned to the squad and ordered everyone to prepare to advance. Shutra confirmed with his group that they should follow the plan to the letter. Upon receiving the signal, Chris led the charge, and the group ran toward the enemy camp. The sudden onslaught caught the tribe guards completely off guard in the middle of the confusion. The Lycan warriors leaped upon their adversaries, clearing the way with violence. During the run, Caitlin shouted for Shutra to be careful, and he replied asking her to do the same. Without stopping, the young prince consulted the holographic map to orient himself within the camp. He pointed the way and ordered his squad to advance through the left toward the food depot. Leading the offensive, Carrick reinforced that his warriors should eliminate anyone who crossed their path. In the middle of the confrontation, one of Bandal's demons blocked an attack, and brought down the enemy with a single blow. He advanced again, hitting another opponent with full force. He noticed a new threat approaching and stopped for a moment. He threw a dagger that hit the target squarely in the head before the demon could reach him. The precise movement revealed his newly acquired skill in dagger throwing. He displayed a brief smile of confidence after the hit and moved forward. He asked, without understanding, when he had learned that, but Shutra replied it was nothing special and hurried the group along. He wanted to know if they should set it on fire, and the prince confirmed they should proceed with the plan. He suddenly realized that Felicia might be trapped inside and could die in the fire. He changed his mind and warned that they needed to find her first, asking Karak to wait a moment. He activated a holographic map to try to locate her exact position. His special skill should register Felicia as a neutral character, revealing her location on the map. As soon as a specific point glowed on the interface, he knew he had found her. He shouted for Karak to follow him and ran in the direction indicated by the system. Arriving at a tent, he forced his way in without hesitation to check the interior. Inside the place, he searched for his sister with his eyes until a voice called his name. At that same moment, he turned in surprise toward the direction where the sound came from. The tent revealed Felicia Doomblade, kneeling on the floor and bound by chains within a circle of energy. She stared at him and asked exactly what he was doing there. He stated that the place was dangerous and that they needed to get out of there as quickly as possible. Felicia just observed him in silence while he tried to free her from the restraints. As soon as he managed to release her, he guided her out of the tent and said they needed to regroup with Chris and Caitlin. Surprised, she stopped and asked if the other two siblings had also come to rescue her. He confirmed it and questioned if that wasn't what they were supposed to have done, leaving her without an answer. When the princess began to explain, Karak appeared shouting that enemies were approaching from all sides. He called for her to follow him, and she agreed to accompany him in the escape. The elf noticed the change in treatment and asked since when he had been calling her by her name. Without answering, he continued running away from the danger, leaving her behind for a moment. Suddenly, she noticed something strange and shouted for him to look back. Before he could react, an energy attack hit his chest full force, coming from behind. The impact launched him forward as he tried to resist the blow. Fallen on the ground, Felicia shouted his name while the flames enveloped him. The fire from the attack spread across the camp floor, illuminating the chaos around them. Desperate, the princess called for Shutra once more, watching the scene without being able to do anything. Soon, the demon that had attacked him turned toward her and advanced. The elf stared him down firmly, showing no fear. Suddenly, a movement appeared behind the enemy. An explosion of energy erupted on the spot, taking everyone by surprise. Felicia watched, astonished, as a silhouette stood up amidst the flames. The figure took a step forward, enveloped by an intense aura of energy. He revealed himself as Shutra, now wielding an energy bow as new skills emerged. With the new power, he displayed a confident smile before his adversaries. He fired a single arrow, which exploded in the center of the enemy army with devastating force. Immediately after, he prepared the next shot, still smiling. Shutra continued the attack, launching several arrows at once against the advancing enemies. Energy projectiles hit their mark, causing a sequence of explosions. With the bow in hand, he celebrated as he realized he was using true magic. Excited, he celebrated the incredible power of the new skill, even though it was only at level 1. Suddenly, a barrier of ice rose from the ground and blocked an attack coming in his direction. Without understanding, he observed the crystals that formed out of nowhere to protect him. Soon, an enemy archer appeared atop a tower, preparing another shot with an energy arrow. He realized the true target was Felicia, who was running to see if he was all right. Immediately, he pushed her away and ordered her not to come closer. The princess watched him, confused by her brother's sudden reaction. At that same instant, a rain of ice projectiles fell from the skies toward him. He faced the attack, ready to receive the impact. With a smile, he decided that this power would also be his. The ice arrow hit him full force and exploded on contact. A freezing mist spread across the field after the explosion. The prince's silhouette remained visible amidst the ice smoke. Shutra emerged from the mist, confirming that he had absorbed the attack and acquired the ice arrow skill. His expression changed as he noticed something strange happening in the system. The impact had dragged him across the ground, but he propped himself up with an ice dagger. Soon, a notification warned that his life was in extreme danger. With his energy so low, he knew he wouldn't survive another blow. Suddenly, Felicia approached and called to him, making him look in her direction. She asked who had asked for him to save her, leaving him without an answer. She shouted that he was the weakest among the siblings and was in no position to save anyone. Her reaction left him confused and without understanding the situation. Next, she asked since when he had been capable of using magic. The enemy was already defeated, but he realized she had misunderstood everything. Before he could explain, Felicia pulled out the ice dagger embedded in his chest. He looked down, surprised by his sister's unexpected gesture. A healing energy emanated, enveloping the wound. He observed the glow of the healing power acting upon his body. In a few seconds, the wound in his chest closed completely, leaving no trace. A system window appeared, confirming that he had acquired the heal skill and that the injury was fully recovered. Felicia asked if he felt better already, and Shutra replied that he did, thanking her for the help and almost mentioning her blood by mistake. Suddenly, a loud noise caught the attention of both, and they turned toward the sound. A huge creature, enveloped by a red aura, emerged amidst the destruction. Shutra recognized it as a blood ogre, and Felicia asked if they really needed to face that to escape. He confirmed firmly, while both watched the monster approach their position. With the ogre advancing, the two prepared for the inevitable fight. The blood ogre attacked with a punch to the ground, forcing Shutra and Felicia to jump back and avoid the impact. Shutra was surprised by the monster's speed, despite its colossal size. Immediately afterward, the princess asked him to buy time so she could use magic, but he questioned how he would do that. Another blow destroyed the soil, forcing them both to retreat again out of range. Determined, the young man agreed to draw the enemy's attention and shouted for her to prepare the magic, using a term that Felicia did not understand. At that moment, he called for Karak, who responded from afar to repeat the same strategy as last time. Without hesitation, the prince opened the system inventory and looked for a specific item. Upon viewing the window, he confirmed that he could now wield the dwarven dagger he had stored. As soon as the choice was made, the weapon materialized in his hand, radiating an aura of energy. He pointed the blade toward the ground and prepared to activate a skill. He drove the dagger into the soil and released a powerful wave of power. Next, he shouted the name of the technique and channeled the energy toward his ally. An intense aura completely enveloped the orc's body, amplifying his strength. With the newly acquired power, Karak let out a roar and prepared for battle. The demonstration surprised the blood ogre, who hesitated for an instant. Strengthened, the warrior advanced straight toward the enemy for the confrontation. The creature tried to crush him with a punch, but he blocked the blow with his axe. The impact made the monster recoil for a few seconds, reacting to the unexpected strength. Immediately, Karak took advantage of the opening and raised his weapon for a counterattack. With all the accumulated power, he delivered a precise blow to the ogre's chest. The creature roared in pain, feeling the damage pierce through its body. Meanwhile, Felicia began to float, enveloped by a shimmering aura. With her hair suspended around her, she channeled her energy and prepared the spell. Following this, she cast a magic that covered the ground with a slippery substance. The blood ogre tried to advance, but its feet slid over the created surface. Losing its balance, the monster fell onto its back with a thud. The orc seized the moment and leaped high, positioning himself above the enemy. From above, he declared that this would be the end of the battle. Then, he came down with a crushing blow against the creature's chest. Hit full force, the ogre let out a final roar before being defeated. The final impact destroyed its body, ending the threat once and for all. With victory secured, Shutra walked through the destroyed camp amidst the debris. With a smile of relief, he celebrated the triumph, even knowing that other enemies still remained. Suddenly, an aura of energy enveloped him, and a system notification caught his attention. Soon, a window appeared before his eyes, displaying new information. The notice confirmed that his level had risen to 10, and he celebrated the advancement. Another message appeared shortly after, indicating that the level of his protagonist's skill had also increased. With a satisfied smile, he felt the new power course through his entire body. A new gift window appeared, and he decided to open the box to check the reward. The notification revealed a passive skill capable of reducing the accuracy of projectiles fired at him. Without delay, he recognized it as a deflection technique against ranged attacks. The screen illustrated the skill with an image of a character escaping multiple shots at the same time. He then realized that he could now reproduce the famous protection effect reserved for protagonists. At that moment, a group of enemy warriors appeared in the middle of the camp, advancing for the attack. The princess shouted his name, warning that the adversaries were approaching while he remained distracted. Without hesitation, Felicia prepared to release her power against the enemies. With a command, she summoned a gale that hit the group full force. The force of the wind was so intense that even the prince had to steady himself to avoid being swept away. Observing the phenomenon, he realized that it resembled magic, but it wasn't exactly that. He soon recognized the energy butterflies and understood that it was the power of a spirit. Then he understood that Felicia was, in fact, a talented spirit summoner. As he followed the attack, a new idea emerged in his mind. With a smile, he wondered if he could also be hit by a power like that. Suddenly, a flare exploded in the sky, drawing everyone's attention in the camp. With the bright flash, the orcs looked up, surprised by the unexpected event. When he identified the light, Carrick informed them that it represented a retreat command. Confused, Shutra wondered what was happening and if someone might be in danger. Faced with his allies' urgency for an order, the prince commanded him to retreat along with all the troops. He then declared that he needed to go to Caitlin, leaving the orc completely surprised. Carrick tried to argue to accompany him, but Shutra insisted there was a reason for the decision, and that everyone should obey. At that moment, Felicia approached and stated she would go with him, surprising the orc general. She said she didn't like owing favors and wanted to take the chance to pay her debt. She also commented that she still had unfinished business with those enemies. Carrick listened in silence, then agreed and asked the prince to be careful before saying goodbye. As they walked through the camp, Felicia asked if it was really necessary to go to Caitlin, and he replied that the retreat order was suspicious. At this, she commented that he seemed very worried about his sister. Shutra simply said it was natural to worry, since they were part of the same family. After that, she observed him in silence for a few moments. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of battle coming from the center of the camp. Then, a horde of muscular demons advanced in a fury toward them. In the midst of the chaos, Caitlin faced the enemies alone, repelling the advance with her own fists. Even surrounded, she stood firm before the imminent combat. Next, she launched multiple energy spheres that exploded against the adversaries. The demons resisted and prepared to attack all at once. Without hesitating, Caitlin materialized an energy sword in her hand to defend herself. In a precise leap, she delivered a slash that hit all the enemies at the same time. Shutra and Felicia arrived in time to see the demons fallen on the ground after the counterattack. Upon witnessing the scene, the mage confirmed it was what she expected, while he realized there was no cause for concern. When she saw them, the princess questioned her brother about the reason for not retreating, and he replied that he came to help her. Without fully understanding, she wanted to know what he meant by that. Suddenly, Caitlin's attention turned to the person beside him. With a cry of joy, the 8th princess ran and hugged Felicia tightly. As she squeezed her in her arms, she said she was happy to see her safe. Felicia replied that it was okay, and that her younger sister worried too much. Watching the interaction, Shutra realized that the two seemed quite close. At that instant, a map interface appeared in his vision, showing the advance of the enemy troops. Analyzing the movement, Caitlin warned that they needed to retreat and ordered him to lead the withdrawal. At another point, Carrick's orcs waited around a large teleportation portal. Soon, someone's feet stepped into the center of the magic summoning circle. Shutra, Felicia, and Caitlin stepped through the portal, while the orcs watched them in silence. As they walked, the 6th princess asked if it was true that the prince had found the portal, and Caitlin confirmed his role in the mission. At the same time, Carrick approached and commented on how much he had changed. The conversation was interrupted by Chris's voice, announcing that everyone had returned safely. Shortly after, he appeared before the group with a confident posture. With a smile, Caitlin informed her brother that she had brought Felicia back. Then, the princess turned to Chris and greeted him, saying it had been some time since they last saw each other. Before her, the 7th prince only observed her in silence for a few seconds. Finally, Chris broke the silence and greeted her back, calling her by her name. The scene shifted to a dark cave, lit by torches scattered along the walls. As they walked, Chris reported that General Bandal had also won his battle, as Yakuzan retreated upon seeing the camp in flames. Not recognizing the name, Shutra asked who he was, and Caitlin explained that he was the chief of the Scarlet Lightning tribe. At that, Felicia wanted to know if Yakuzan had surrendered, but Chris clarified that the enemy had only fled and could regroup. He then announced that they would attack Kairam's forces the following day to prevent the two armies from uniting. Changing the subject, the prince asked Felicia what had brought her to that place. She replied that she was researching nearby ruins and ended up captured while trying to help in the battle. Suspicious, Chris questioned if that was really true. Felicia shot back, asking if he believed she was lying. The two stared at each other in silence for a few moments. After that, he gave in and said to set the matter aside and rest. With a thank you, Felicia agreed, and Chris dismissed everyone so they could recover their energy. A short time later, the soldiers were already gathered around a campfire, enjoying their meal. Away from the group, Shutra observed his skill window with satisfaction. While analyzing his techniques in a corner of the cave, his name was suddenly called. Turning around, he found Felicia standing at the entrance, asking permission to enter for a moment. He wanted to know what brought her there at that hour, but she only observed him in silence. Then, the princess began to walk slowly toward him. When she stopped in front of him, she called him by his name once more. Unexpectedly, her hand reached out and grabbed his collar firmly. Caught by surprise by the sudden gesture, The prince was unable to react. Moments later, Felicia stared at him and ordered him to take off his clothes. Completely bewildered, Shutra merely questioned the order he had received. With a firm hand on his collar, Felicia repeated that he needed to take off his clothes. Still not understanding, the prince asked what the reason for such a request was. She then asked him if he would not allow his condition to be treated properly. His response was nothing but an expression of complete confusion. Felicia explained that what she had done before was nothing more than first aid. She then revealed that she wanted to use healing magic again, as he might have internal injuries. The young woman mentioned the light his body had emitted earlier, and asked if there was a problem, but he said that it happened sometimes. Shutra deflected the subject and declared that he had a request for her. With a smile, he approached and stated it was something that only Felicia could do. Then, 3 new healing skills appeared in his status window. Satisfied with the result, the prince dressed himself again and observed the new acquisitions. The scene showed that he learned 3 healing spells after she used them on him at his request. A short time later, he met with Caitlin and commented that the day of his training had finally arrived. With a smile, the 8th princess announced that he would learn the werewolf branch of the Beast Fist art. The Beast Fist art was introduced as the symbolic martial art of the lycanthropes. Shutra then understood that the werewolf style was the foundation of that technique and the reason why Caitlin was teaching him. Next, she explained that the style used both internal and external aura, and that she would show him the basics of internal aura. Following the instruction, he closed his eyes and an aura began to manifest in his body. He soon confirmed that he could already feel the flow of power coursing through his interior. The energy was described as the life force that traversed every part of his body. Later, it was revealed that aura, at its extreme, became the very power of the soul. As soon as the energy intensified, Shutra opened his eyes immediately. With the change, a system notification appeared, informing him that he had acquired the passive skill Protagonist's Physique. The description stated that it increased training efficiency and unlocked special traits according to levels. Upon reading the content, he realized it was yet another extremely powerful skill. A comparison showed that the new skill was not inferior to his other training passives. He then understood that the system added new functions as the skills evolved. A smile appeared on his face at the discovery. With clenched fists, he finally realized what it meant to be the protagonist, until Caitlin called him. Brought back to reality, he heard his sister ask what he was doing and apologized for the distraction. Then, she announced that the training for the Beast Fist art would begin in earnest. As soon as the training started, he acquired the skill and manifested the aura in his fists. Impressed by the speed and precision, Caitlin praised his performance in the basic movements. Looking at his own hands, Shutra understood the power of that new martial art. When Caitlin was about to teach the next technique, a soldier appeared running and called out to her. The messenger approached in a hurry and reported that something terrible had happened. Far from there, Chris communicated to the group that Kairam's unit had disappeared. Gathered around a map, everyone reacted with surprise at the news. Given the gravity of the situation, Chris concluded that the enemy had discovered the plan, and Caitlin asked what the next step would be. Based on information from General Bandal, he pointed out the exact spot where Yakuzan and Kairam were supposed to meet. After analyzing the terrain, Shutra agreed that the probability was high and that they would need to take a risk. Then, Chris announced that they would join forces with the general for a large-scale battle against the Scarlet Lightning tribe. The scene shifted to the main base of the enemy subjugation army. At the camp, General Bandal welcomed Chris warmly and praised his arrival. With a smile, Chris greeted the general and commented that he remained the same as always. As Bandal turned to the princesses, Felicia interrupted him to ask about her subordinates. Shutra followed the interaction with a slight smile on his lips. Looking at the general, he remembered that Bandal was his favorite character from the game Night Saga. Shortly after, he took a step forward and formally introduced himself to the commander. Bandal observed him in silence for a few moments before shaking his hand and recognizing him as the 9th prince. Suddenly, Shutra's vision transformed, and a woman with white hair appeared enveloped in an intense light. The figure revealed her different colored eyes while observing him. Before her, another presence enveloped in flames suddenly appeared. A warrior in red armor showed herself completely amidst the fire. The two stared fixedly at each other for a moment without saying a word. Soon, Shutra found himself at the center of the projection of those two imposing figures. The unexpected apparition left him completely astonished by the scene. Next, the symbols of conquest and war appeared before his eyes. With a start, he woke up and realized he was sitting on his bed. Confused, he wondered if that hadn't been just a dream. He soon recalled that he had already seen the woman with the colored eyes in another vision. Even so, he could not identify who the warrior in red armor was. His thoughts were interrupted by Karak, who warned that the departure was imminent. Shortly after, the two went together out of the tent toward the army. Outside, the troops moved hurriedly, carrying supplies for the battle. Shutra revealed that he had been assigned to command the left flank of the formation. The map showed Bandal leading the center, while Chris and Caitlin would handle the right flank, and the Dark Elves would guard the rear. The march began, and time passed quickly. Suddenly, Shutra realized where he was. It was then that he realized he was already in the middle of a vast battlefield, surrounded by thousands of soldiers. At the head of the center of the troops, General Bandal ordered the battle formation to be established. With a smile, he promised to teach the enemies the true meaning of suffering. Immediately, he raised his voice and commanded all troops to advance against the enemy. The orcs responded at once, marching with shields raised and weapons in hand. The general watched with satisfaction as the enemy movement came toward him, but his expression changed when a massive explosion erupted in the middle of his own troops. Stunned, he questioned aloud what was happening. Looking down, he saw the trail of destruction spreading rapidly across the battlefield. Suddenly, a colossal fur-covered creature resembling a mammoth emerged, clearing a path through the ranks. In a panic, Bandal shouted that it was a swamp mammoth. As the beast advanced, energy explosions hit it from all sides. However, it soon became clear that those explosions came from attacks launched by their own allies. The warriors of the Scarlet Thunder tribe began to fall under friendly fire. In the middle of the confusion, Shutra, alongside Karak, observed the devastation spreading. With a start, he realized the trap and declared that they had been deceived. He then understood that the enemies had known everything from the beginning, while the mammoths continued to advance. The creature was described as a swamp mammoth of incomparable proportions. Its red eyes sparked with fury, revealing a terrifying monstrosity. Faced with the threat, an energy aura emerged around Shutra. Suddenly, sharp claws tore through the ground, and new beasts emerged from the earth. In a short time, an army of lizardmen armed with swords joined the battle. The unexpected arrival of these enemy reinforcements left Shutra and his troops in shock. On another front, Chris realized that the adversaries were merely playing with their forces. Caitlin suggested that it would be better to retreat and seek another opportunity. She warned that if they continued, casualties would only increase until complete annihilation. Chris reflected in silence for a few moments before making a decision. He soon raised his voice to catch the attention of the entire army amidst the chaos. He ordered the mages to form a defensive barrier at the rear, while the others prepared for withdrawal. With the order given, the fight between orcs and lizardmen proceeded violently. In the middle of the combat, a lizard warrior leaped toward Shutra to attack him. At the final instant, an allied orc intercepted the blow and protected him from the enemy. Karak bellowed for everyone to maintain formation, warning that any carelessness could be fatal. Shutra nodded, recognizing that this reality was far beyond a simple game. Meanwhile, Chris faced several enemies surrounding him alone. With a firm shout, he ordered everyone to survive and return alive, no matter the cost. Sometime later, the survivors managed to regroup at an improvised camp. At the base, the wounded were treated with healing magic to attend to the battle damage. Inside a tent, Chris took the blame for the failure and lamented not having been suspicious sooner. General Bandal declared that the only options were to retreat or request reinforcements. Chris agreed with the assessment and stated he would not risk his subordinates' lives just for pride. As he was preparing to give the order, Felicia interrupted him, saying she had thought of an alternative. The young woman reminded everyone that the real reason for her presence in that region was the exploration of a ruin in the Gishka Mountains. Shutra recalled that, in the game, the character's focus had always been linked to research and investigation. Shortly after, Felicia unrolled an ancient map on the table and pointed to the exact location of the place. Gathered with the others, she revealed that she had been studying the lair of the Earth Dragon, a ruin preserved for 1,500 years. She explained that Enkidu, a dragon born from magma, used various guardians to protect his own treasure. During the account, she mentioned that the dwarves had received from him a special weapon called the anvil that gives life to thunder. Next, she revealed that this relic possessed the power to control the guardian chimeras and cast magic on an army scale. With firmness, she struck her hand on the table before everyone. Finally, Felicia declared that the only way to achieve victory would be to find that relic. With that, General Bandal asked Felicia about the exact location of the anvil, revealing that it was the true reason for his presence. Immediately after, Chris Moonlight admitted to not knowing the precise location and considered the information not very useful at that moment. In his assessment, he stated that they could not risk everyone's lives on a simple treasure hunt, as the enemy could attack at any second. Right away, Felicia contested the objection raised by Chris. At that instant, Shutra stepped forward and guaranteed to everyone that the relic was indeed in that place. Next, he explained that he had found references to the anvil in an old story linked to the hero Locke, and also in his studies of runes. Above all, he declared that he fully trusted Felicia. The princess observed him in silence without saying a word. He then turned his back to the others, positioning himself by her side. Even so, Chris approached and argued that the issue was not trust, but rather the precious time they were wasting. To push back, Shutra pointed to the map and cited a similar legend from the Gandharva tribe related to that region. Based on this, he concluded that there was a high probability the entrance to the ruins was nearby. Finally, he asked them to believe in him just this once, promising to put everything on the line. Soon after, Felicia summoned ghost horses capable of flight, which appeared in the skies before the group. Everyone mounted the creatures and departed immediately toward their destination. As they moved through the air, Sarah thought that, at the very least, they had finally begun the search for the anvil. At that moment, Karak warned Shutra to hold on tight, but he guaranteed he wouldn't fall. He had ridden those mounts before. The demon prince then activated an interface before him. Calmly, he informed them that, maintaining that speed, it would take about an hour to arrive, and that the mini-map would make searching for the ruins easier. As they flew, his eyes turned toward Felicia, who was riding a few meters ahead. Shortly after, he closed his eyes for a moment, absorbing the moment. The group continued their journey, flying over territory lit only by the night. Suddenly, Shutra explained that he could determine the location of the anvil by combining the maps of ancient tunnels with the current terrain. As soon as he finished, Karak and Caitlin looked at him in silence before asking if that had actually worked. Once on solid ground, the orc wanted to know what all that meant, but Chris simply ordered Shutra to guide them. At that moment, Felicia intervened and declared she had understood the explanation, telling him to take the lead. After a brief silence, the prince turned and ordered everyone to follow him. As they walked, the sixth princess observed every detail in silence. Soon, Karak commented that everyone was following the prince without question. A little later, the group arrived before a rock wall and discovered the path was blocked. Facing the barrier, Karak questioned if he really knew the entrance to the ruins, as that didn't look right. In response, Shutra asked if at any point he had said they were going to the entrance. Next, he turned to Caitlin and asked her to try to open a passage with a well-aimed strike. The princess accepted the request, while Felicia watched every movement closely. Shortly after, Felicia asked if he really believed the relic was inside that cliff. Firmly, Shutra explained that, according to his calculations, entering through that point would avoid a direct confrontation with the dungeon guardians. Felicia interrupted him, questioning how he expected Caitlin to destroy the wall with only her fists. Then, she asked if he believed the princess was some kind of siege weapon. Felicia's hand began to accumulate an intense amount of energy. She then declared that ruin explorers always have a secondary specialization in destruction and explosives. The princess then fired the accumulated energy directly against the rock wall. The explosion hit the cliff with full force, making the impact resonate throughout the region. As soon as the dust cleared, a passage into the interior of the ruins was revealed before the group. Felicia observed the newly opened entrance, questioning if they had truly found the location so quickly. The group entered the ruins, and Karak asked about the dome-shaped structure in the center. Shutra replied that it was the final protection for the anvil. Karak suggested breaking it, but Shutra warned him that doing so could damage the relic. Felicia commented that there must be some kind of mechanism to open it. Then she turned to observe the rest of the room. Immediately, she noticed that the statues looked strange. Out of the 9, only 3 were holding weapons. Caitlin suggested that it might be necessary to provide weapons to the remaining statues, but Felicia doubted it was that simple. She explained that the weapons were of dwarven manufacture, which indicated that the other statues would also need dwarven weapons. Unexpectedly, Shutra revealed that he happened to have 6 of them. The demon prince explained that he couldn't use them before because of his low level, so he had kept them in his inventory. Next, he mentioned to Karak that, as a precaution, he had brought the weapons he found during the last expedition to the tunnel. Shutra asked the orc to position the heavy weapons, and Karak, though grumbling, agreed. Soon, one of the dwarven swords was placed in the hands of a stone statue. The same procedure was repeated with all the other unarmed statues around the room. As soon as the last weapon was fitted, the eyes of one of the stone guardians lit up. A beam of light connected all the statues, activating the room's central mechanism. Next, the dome-shaped structure began to open before everyone. The group watched closely as a strong light emanated from the interior. Shutra kept his gaze fixed on the object being revealed. Finally, the anvil that gives life to thunder emerged in the center of the room. As soon as the relic emerged, Felicia explained that, according to the records, a final procedure was still needed to activate it. Next, she instructed Shutra and Karak to remain where they were, while the others were to position themselves around the circle. The princess detailed that everyone would infuse mana into the disc in a clockwise direction, starting with her, and gradually increasing the amount. Each member then took their position around the anvil. After asking the group to focus, Felicia began the ritual and released her energy. They followed her, making the relic glow with increasing intensity. During the process, she ordered Shutra to push his mana with more force. She asked him to maintain the rhythm and not lose concentration. Both continued channeling energy toward the anvil. The young man exerted himself to the utmost to sustain the flow, concentrating all his strength on the ritual. Then, a column of energy shot out from the anvil and pierced through the ceiling of the dungeon. As the dust settled, Shutra observed the result of the activation. Suddenly, he found himself in an unknown place, surrounded by countless dwarves. A demonic claw emerged from the cracked earth. A chaotic battlefield between demons and dwarves revealed itself around him. While trying to comprehend the situation, an imposing voice ordered its vassals to listen. He turned his face toward that mysterious presence. Dwarf warriors gathered around the demon prince. Shutra watched everything intently. Before everyone, an immense winged creature appeared in the skies. The same voice ordered them to protect the sacred nest of the great Enkidu. Then, the creature declared that he should become the guardian of the gate. His mission would be to remain between the demon realm and the human realm. Back to reality, the young man woke up on the ground. Still in shock, he was breathing heavily from what he had witnessed. At that moment, he recognized that the vision could only be of the black dragon, Enkidu. A voice asked if he had also seen that. Walking through the room, Felicia described an immense black dragon whose body flowed like molten lava. Karak confirmed having seen the same creature, and Shutra questioned if everyone had shared the vision. The princess replied that it seemed so, although she still didn't know what it meant. She turned toward the anvil. Before the relic, she stated that the only certainty was that using it would reveal the truth. Then, she positioned herself before the anvil. Her hand touched the surface of the relic, leaving a trail of blood. A wave of dark energy exploded from the anvil and enveloped her. The princess began to be consumed by the power. She clenched her teeth, resisting the impact. Seeing the scene, Shutra shouted her name. Then the demon prince reached out his hand, pleading for her to stop. He grabbed Felicia's arm and was also overtaken by the dark energy. An explosion of power erupted in the center of the room. From afar, Karak and Caitlin shouted Shutra's and Felicia's names. While being consumed, the young man also screamed amidst the dark energy. It was revealed that the mana of the earth dragon, Enkidu, imposed a test on those without permission to conquer it. The energy exploded over the anvil, while a voice declared that to conquer meant to dominate. The two companions watched from afar as the dark energy spread through the room. When the explosion subsided, only an energy crystal remained on the floor. Shortly after, Shutra appeared kneeling, holding the object, with half of his face covered by darkness. His appearance had changed, and one of his eyes glowed intensely. The scene shifts to the orc camp set up in a canyon. From the top of a cliff, a lookout observed the movement below. Shortly after, he raised his binoculars to watch the sight. While studying the camp, he muttered whether the fools really believed they wouldn't be discovered. Next, he knelt before his leader and asked if they should attack immediately. Yakuzan, chief of the Scarlet Lightning tribe, listened in silence. The commander then ordered everyone to prepare for battle. Before his army, he declared they would eliminate the stragglers. In the orc camp, green-skinned warriors walked through the canyon. Suddenly, two of them looked up. An immense fireball descended from the skies toward the camp. The explosion hit the center with devastating force. Several orcs were caught directly by the impact. Next, the army of the Scarlet Lightning tribe appeared before them. The red-skinned warriors advanced in a fierce attack. In the midst of the chaos, Chris Moonlight found himself surrounded by the green-skinned orcs. He realized that neither Caitlin nor Felicia were nearby to help him. As new explosions shook the site, Yakuzan watched from afar. He mocked the demons for having advanced without knowing the terrain. Shortly after, he ordered his mages to finish the rest and kill everyone. But the hand of one of the mages was suddenly overtaken by a strange aura. Confused, he questioned why his hand would not obey. At the same time, one of the giant mammoths was enveloped by the same energy, and its eyes glowed. They looked up, alarmed by what they saw. Unexpectedly, the mammoth turned against its own allies and attacked them with fury. From the top of the cliff, Yakuzan watched the chaos ensue in his ranks. He wondered why his own forces were in conflict. In the middle of the battlefield, Chris Moonlight also observed the uncontrolled mammoth. He remained in silence before the scene. Back in the dungeon, Shutra's hand held an object that pulsed with energy. While being enveloped by the aura, he wondered if the enemy had found the anvil. He knelt, holding the object firmly. The dark energy materialized, taking the form of a hammer in his hand. Shortly after, Sarah appeared to support Felicia and revealed that the weapon was the Thunder Hammer, the anvil's counterpart. She stated that it seemed Enkidu had chosen him. Shutra cast a glance in their direction. Before everyone, Felicia, now with marks on her face, ordered him to use the weapon. With the hammer in hand, he observed the energy enveloping it. He revealed that Enkidu's mana had shown him how to wield it. The dragon's voice echoed, explaining that conquering and subjugating was the way to dominate. He raised the hammer, understanding the method to use the anvil that gives life to thunder. He declared he would start by dominating the swamp mammoth. Then, he struck the hammer against the ground and released a wave of energy. On the battlefield, the giant mammoth roared, its eyes glowing with the same power. Immediately, all the mammoths turned against the Scarlet Lightning tribe and attacked. In the midst of the chaos, red-skinned warriors questioned why they were suddenly being attacked. In the confusion, one of the demon's allies advanced against an enemy warrior. One of the red tribe chiefs stepped forward and cut down his enemies. Seeing the mammoth attacking the enemy, he concluded that the prince and princess had succeeded. Before his troops, the demon commander ordered them to kill everyone and let no opponent escape. They advanced with fury against their opponents. The army of the Scarlet Lightning tribe was surrounded and attacked from all sides. From the top of the cliff, Yakuzan observed the chaotic battle unfolding below. His subordinate questioned what was happening, but Yakuzan admitted he did not know who controlled that mana. He suggested they retreat and wait for a new opportunity, surprising the tribe chief. At that instant, an explosion of dust erupted before them. Chris Moonlight landed in front of Yakuzan and his trusted man. Facing the enemy chief, he declared that this seemed to be the end for him. Next, he offered a less painful death in exchange for his surrender, which infuriated Yakuzan. He raised his axe and promised to tear him apart right there. Chris's eyes glowed intensely. He advanced using the Beast God Fist art. His devastating blow hit Yakuzan and the subordinate at the same time. Shortly after, the soldiers of the Scarlet Lightning tribe announced that their chief, Lord Yakuzan, had been killed. As the enemies fled, Chris looked at his own bloodied hand and commented that now they only needed to eliminate the stragglers. He thought they would have been in serious trouble if not for those two. From the top of the cliff, the prince only hoped that nothing had happened to them. Back in the dungeon, a projection revealed the battle happening outside. While Karek asked if that was the mammoth's vision, Felicia confirmed that the anvil had the power to control all the treasure guardians. The princess stated that, with that power, the Scarlet Lightning tribe would be... Before finishing the sentence, her body gave way, and she fainted, being immediately supported by Sarah. Worried, Sarah asked if the princess was okay, but she only assured her she would be better with a little rest. As the group gathered to help her, Karek looked to the side. At that moment, everyone realized that Shutra had disappeared, leaving only an empty corridor. Far away from there, Shutra celebrated finally being able to breathe a sigh of relief as several level-up notifications appeared before him. He immediately questioned whether the sudden advancement had been caused by controlling Enkidu's relic. Shortly after, a new notification informed him that the level of his conquest skill had risen. Upon opening the skill screen, he noticed that both Conquest and Under the King's Banner had advanced. Although he didn't fully understand it, he concluded that the strengthening of his primary skill could only be a positive thing. His attention then turned to the newly acquired King's Knights, which he presumed to be a summoning skill. At that moment, a voice called out to him, making him turn around immediately. Caitlin was running in his direction. The boy then remembered that he had left without telling anyone. Before he could even apologize, the princess punched his head hard. She then scolded him for disappearing like that, and he simply apologized. Soon after, she let go of him and said that, since he was safe, they should return, but they would have to camp there. As they walked together, Caitlin explained that the original plan was different, but a problem had arisen. Shutra immediately asked what the problem was. It was then revealed that Felicia had lost consciousness and remained fast asleep. Caitlin commented that she must have overexerted herself, as she had just been freed from the Scarlet Lightning tribe. Following that, she explained that although Felicia had said she would be fine, it was now unknown when she would wake up. The princess concluded that without her, they couldn't summon the ghost horses and would need to watch over her there for the time being. Shutra agreed, though he wondered if Felicia would truly be okay. Night fell over the mountains. Inside the ruins, the group rested, scattered throughout the hall. Leaning against a pillar, the demon prince sat with his arms crossed. Shortly after, he reflected on whether his stamina had fully recovered just by leveling up. Since he didn't feel tired, he considered that perhaps he should just wait until dawn. Suddenly, an idea occurred to him. Since they were in a ruin, there should be hidden weapons and treasures in the dungeon. He also thought that the place would certainly be full of traps and guardians. His gaze fell upon the thunder hammer in his hands. With the weapon raised, he questioned what would happen if he were the ruler of this place. Finally, he concluded that although the anvil's power only worked there, inside the ruin it manifested as absolute power. With this, Shutra understood that he had earned a free pass to that entire territory. Meanwhile, Karak was sleeping soundly on the floor of the hall. The young man then approached and woke the orc, who was still drowsy. He then invited him to accompany him to another place. The two followed together through a dark corridor lit by torches. While Karak questioned if it was safe, Shutra reassured him, saying he was the ruler of the place and there was nothing to worry about. Opening a stone door, he reminded Karak that since it was a ruin, there would certainly be good weapons hidden inside. Immediately, the orc cast an attentive gaze into the interior of the room. Right after, he warned about a gigantic monster lying on the floor. Before the creature, the demon prince recognized it as a griffin-shaped arc golem, an enemy of devastating power. At that moment, Karak commented that they could have died if they had entered without caution, and suggested they retreat quickly. Even with the insistence of the orc, who did not hide his terror before the colossus, Shutra simply called him a coward. Then, a massive stone door opened at the end of the corridor. Upon crossing it, Karak exclaimed excitedly that they had finally found the treasure. The orc held up a piece of armor, and the prince agreed that it seemed to be of excellent quality. Examining it more closely, he felt a subtle aura of mana and confirmed it was magic armor. He then offered the item to Karak, who hesitated before asking if he could really keep it. The prince confirmed, noting that the armor was too big for himself, and the orc thanked him enthusiastically. Shortly after, some coins caught his attention on a nearby table. He then picked up one of the ancient gold coins and decided to store all the useful objects in his inventory. Meanwhile, he instructed Karak to collect everything of value. Suddenly, a chest in the corner of the room captured his attention. Approaching to investigate, he opened it and found it full of coins. At that instant, a strange sound reverberated through the environment. Surprised, he turned, trying to understand what was happening. Before his eyes, a wall began to slide slowly, revealing a hidden space. With that, he declared that there was definitely something beyond. He then advanced toward the newly exposed passage. After crossing the narrow corridor, a vast chamber opened before him. Shutra simply remained in silence, observing every detail of the new location. In the center, upon a pedestal, floated an object enveloped in a peculiar energy. Immediately, he recognized the mana emanating from the relic. Even without ever having seen it before, the name Enkidu instinctively surfaced in his mind. Soon, he identified the item as the Gauntlet of Enkidu. Finally, the true name of the relic revealed itself before him, Earthquaker. In front of the pedestal, he remained in silence, merely observing the relic that floated before him. Soon, a voice echoed calling him the valiant knight of conquest, and at that moment, he recognized the item as the Gauntlet of Enkidu. Determining that the relic was calling to him, the demon prince walked toward it. As soon as his hand touched the surface of the gauntlet, multiple notifications appeared, informing him that his level, mana, mental strength, and physical strength were insufficient. Even without fully understanding, he questioned if he was still unable to wield it. Suddenly, a new message flashed before his eyes. Permission granted. Immediately, another notification informed him that the gauntlet recognized him as its master. Finally, a final declaration appeared, confirming that the user of the Earthquaker would be changed to Shutra. In that same instant, the gauntlet flew to his arm and attached itself firmly. A wave of energy then exploded around them, filling the entire hall while the relic equipped itself. He simply watched, surprised, as the energy flowed through his body via the new equipment. While looking at the gauntlet, he could not hide his shock at having been recognized as its master. Next, he noticed that his strength, mana, and stamina attributes had increased drastically. Soon, he questioned how that was possible just by equipping the item, and reflected on what would happen when he reached the appropriate level. Enchanted, he declared that the gauntlet was simply incredible. On the information screen, the name Gauntlet of Enkidu was clearly displayed, and he concluded that the item was even better than he had expected. Suddenly, Karak appeared behind him, asking what had happened. The orc revealed he had seen everything, including the moment the gauntlet appeared out of nowhere. As he confirmed that the orc had indeed witnessed the scene, Shutra thought it would be problematic if his inventory were revealed. With that, Karak pondered that it would only become a burden if other people found out. Then, he swore he would keep the secret forever, taking it to his grave. In light of the promise, the prince asked if they should head back now that they had gathered what they needed. As he prepared to leave, He commented that the place gave him a bad feeling. Soon, both agreed it would be better to return for now. The two then left the secret chamber and returned to the treasure room. Suddenly, something caught the prince's attention on the other side of the room. He raised his hand to stop Karak and asked him to wait a moment. While the orc questioned the reason, Shutra simply pointed in the opposite direction. With enthusiasm, he declared that exactly what they needed was right there. Back in the main hall, he gave a potion to Felicia, who drank it immediately. In that same instant, an intense glow took over her body, drawing everyone's gaze. Soon, she slowly opened her eyes. While holding her, he asked if she had already awakened, and the princess merely murmured his name. With Caitlin's help, she managed to sit up and, still dazed, questioned what had happened. The 8th princess then explained that Shutra had brought a mana recovery potion. Still confused, Felicia wanted to know where he could have gotten something so rare. In response, he simply gestured to the location and reminded her of where they were. Immediately, the princess remembered that they were still inside the ruins. With a slight smile, he reminded her not to forget that he was the ruler of this place. Next, he guaranteed that she could rest without worry, as her mana would be fully restored when she woke up. Felicia then thanked him, which left him surprised. Shortly after, she repeated the thanks in an embarrassed manner. The following morning, the sun rose over the canyon where the battle had come to an end. From the camp, General Bandal announced that they had finally returned, declaring that from the beginning he believed the prince and princess would succeed. In the face of the celebration, Chris cleared his throat discreetly to get Felicia and Shutra's attention. The 7th prince turned toward the group and cleared his throat again, hesitating for a moment before managing to speak. Soon, he praised Felicia, recognizing that her work had been impressive. With confidence, the princess replied that it had been nothing. Shutra simply observed the interaction between the two. Next, Chris instructed that she should rest while they took care of the cleanup, which surprised her. Then, he clarified that the remnants of the Scarlet Thunder tribe still needed to be eliminated, but that everything would be resolved in half a month at most. Upon hearing that, Shutra questioned Caitlin if that meant they would have a half-month vacation. Immediately, the princess approached and whispered in his ear that there would be no vacation. The sudden proximity left him speechless. Finally, Caitlin stated directly that he still had something to settle with her. Far from the camp, Shutra's new task began in an isolated forest. He received a direct punch to the stomach. The blow landed with full force. Standing before him, Caitlin warned him to pull himself together or suffer the consequences. As he fell to the ground, the princess ordered him to get up immediately. Lying there, he thought that training in the beast fist art was brutal. It was then that he understood that the task Caitlin mentioned was precisely this training. For the first 5 days, the training consisted only of being hit repeatedly. After a week, he began to see Caitlin's punches coming. The 11th day of training arrived. Now, he was already able to keep up with her movements and dodge her attacks. Caitlin commented that he was starting to follow her lead very well. He replied that it was about time, after all the beatings he had taken. Thanks to the intense training, his beast fist art and aura skills reached level 5. Caitlin declared that from that point on, he was ready to begin the beast god fist art. She praised him, saying she had never seen anyone learn so fast. Shutra concentrated, determined to master the secret technique of the lycanthropes. The princess held his hands and said she would teach him a new way to use aura. While maintaining a firm grip, Caitlin instructed him not to miss a single detail and to follow closely. With a nod of his head, Shutra confirmed that he understood. Their joined hands began to glow with intense energy. An explosion of aura erupted around the two of them. With his eyes closed, he realized he could feel Caitlin's aura. He perceived that the energy guided him in a similar yet different way, allowing him to feel the depth of the aura more and more. He reflected that, when taken to the extreme, aura became the power of the soul and of conquest. To him, conquering and imposing obedience was a form of fierce and dominating power. While floating amidst the energy, Shutra wondered if this was the true aura. In the forest, the column of energy began to dissipate slowly. Notifications appeared, informing him that the levels of his beast fist art and aura had increased. Caitlin simply commented that he was incredible. Another notification announced that he had acquired beast god fist art level 1. He looked at the energy in his hand and reflected on his new achievements. He clenched his fist and released a wave of power. The aura continued to swirl around him and Caitlin in the clearing. A final notification informed him that his level had risen to 14. While being observed by a mysterious figure, Shutra declared that from that moment on, everything would truly begin. The figure remained in silence, hidden behind a tree. The next morning, the demon camp was fully restored. Inside a tent, Shutra and Caitlin were sitting at the table. He asked if he could question her about Felicia. Shutra wanted to understand why things between her and Chris were that way. While thinking about the need to have Felicia as an ally, he considered that the tense relationship between the two could be a problem. Caitlin explained that they didn't get along poorly, they just seemed distant from each other. She said there had never been a direct incident between them. Finally, she suggested that the tension might have to do with something between Chris and Sylvan. Suddenly, she reprimanded Shutra for using Sylvan's name so lightly, and he apologized immediately. He then remembered that Sylvan Doomblade, Felicia's twin brother, had been a difficult opponent when he played as Zephyr. He began to imagine what the true problem between Chris and Sylvan could be. At that moment, Chris entered the tent, catching them both by surprise. As he sat at the table, Shutra asked what was happening and why he had arrived early. Chris replied that they should pack their things, saying the matter had been resolved faster than expected, and that they would depart in the afternoon. At the news, Shutra wanted to know where they were going. He declared that, with the matter resolved, they would need to report in, of course. He thanked the princes and princesses for their effort and dedication during that period. He said he looked forward to the day they would meet again. Shutra replied that he would also wait for him. Before the group, Chris asked if they should depart already. He announced that they would go to the Demon King's castle. The imposing castle appeared under a dark red sky. Inside a vast throne room, a solitary figure remained seated in his seat. The figure was revealed to be the Demon King himself, waiting on his throne. The journey back to the Demon King's castle was straightforward. First, it was a matter of reaching a long-distance teleportation circle and then using transfer magic to return directly. The trip to the nearest point would take 3 days, without any stops at inns along the way. Sitting before the campfire, Shutra poked at a stick and admitted to being a bit nervous about finally arriving at the castle the next day. He thought about how power was divided among 3 main factions, that of the second Prince Zephyr, the first Prince Baikal, and the fourth Princess Anastasia. In the struggle for the throne, birth order did not matter, as power was based on who accumulated more conquests and demonstrated greater skill. Baikal and Zephyr, blood brothers, had inherited the power of the Draconian clan from their mother, which granted them immense strength. The young man considered that if he had to choose an heir, the more moderate Baikal would be the best option, but he quickly dismissed the thought. He knew that this choice no longer made sense because, after that day, everything would change completely. Resolved, he prepared himself for what was to come. The first step would be to raise his level until he could fully wield the Earthquaker Gauntlet. Then, he intended to fully explore the new strength he had acquired, the King's Knights. Upon analyzing the skill window, he was surprised to realize it functioned like a guild system, with bonuses, training, and even summoning. He covered his mouth, shocked, realizing how absurdly powerful that skill was. As he smiled, imagining how much he could evolve, Karak appeared, calling out to him. The orc scolded him for still being awake, reminding him that they needed to rest to leave early in the morning. Shutra turned with a smile and said he had arrived at the perfect time, ignoring the guard's serious tone. With a glint in his eyes, the prince invited him to participate in a small experiment. Karak became visibly nervous and asked what it was about. Under the moonlight, Shutra summoned a glowing sword and called for the powerful orc warrior. He touched the blade to his shoulder and officially named him as his knight. A blue energy enveloped Karak's body, and he looked at himself in surprise. He commented that the sensation was strange and declared he felt his loyalty to the prince increasing. Shutra cheered excitedly, certain that this was exactly the expected result. Karak, still confused, said it was good to overflow with strength, but he had no idea what had just happened. Shutra placed his hands on Karak's shoulders and asked if he didn't want to become the strongest orc in the world. He promised to turn him into an orc emperor as powerful as the dragon race itself. Leaving the guard so confused, he asked if the prince was feeling all right. The scene shifts to an ancient and lonely tower, erected in the middle of a forest. 3 days later, the group finally arrives at the Great Hall of the Teleportation Circle. Chris approaches Shutra with a smile and asks if they should depart now. The prince agrees and prepares for the journey. They gather on the magic platform, which soon begins to glow intensely. At the instant the magic is activated, he tries to shout for them to wait, but it is already too late. Shutra is thrown uncontrollably through the flow of magical energy. He lands abruptly on the other side, completely disoriented. Caitlin approaches and asks if he is okay, receiving a positive response, though he still seems dazed. At that moment, he notices Felicia's presence. A group of women runs to her, celebrating her arrival with enthusiasm. Felicia is surrounded by her attendants, all smiling and greeting her with excitement. Shutra observes the scene and thinks it looks more like a celebrity's fan club. Meanwhile, Chris and Caitlin's subordinates approach to greet them joyfully. Realizing that no one came to receive him, the prince hears two of Felicia's servants whispering to each other. Looking at the separate groups, he finally understands his true standing within the Demon King's castle. Even so, he maintains a confident smile, certain that everything is happening exactly as he expected. He turns to the guard and asks if he is ready for what is to come. With determination, he declares that, from that moment on, they will begin to change things, one step at a time. Shutra's tower inside the imposing castle was a completely abandoned and forgotten place. His quarters were dusty, filled with old crates and covered in spiderwebs. Karak commented that they could unpack their things right there, and the prince replied that at least they had a room to stay in. Leaning on the orc, he said they would have free time until the official event the following day, but the feeling was that they had been left to rot. At that moment, knocks on the door made him turn around, surprised. A woman in a formal uniform introduced herself as Flora, from the Demon King's Castle Property Management Office. Shutra questioned the reason for an official visit to such an abandoned place, and she explained that she was there due to the increase in his public merit level. She announced that he was now eligible to choose a new residence, leaving him completely shocked. Shortly after, he met with Isabella, the head of the Public Merit Office. He asked if he was in the right place to receive a new home, and she confirmed with a smile. Isabella then activated a magic panel, revealing the prince's updated status. Thanks to his latest conquest, his merit level had risen to 5, granting access to more facilities and an increase in his monthly payment. She informed him that he was the first prince to achieve so much on his first mission, leaving him speechless for a few seconds. Shutra quickly asked to see the available residences, and Isabella agreed to show them. In the background, Karak seemed in shock, stuttering the prince's name. Facing a luxurious mansion with golden gates, the orc asked if that place was really his new residence. Inside, Flora received them, commenting that they had arrived earlier than expected, which left them both confused. Dressed in a maid uniform, she bowed and said it would be an honor to serve them from that day on. Karak whispered, intrigued by the sudden change in profession, and Shutra explained that he had hired her using his merit points. He dismissed further explanations, while the orc grumbled that the prince had been saying nonsensical things lately. The following day, the scene shifted to another wing of the castle. Inside a hall, Karak, wearing formal attire, confessed to being so nervous that he felt like going to the bathroom, and Shutra told him to go at once. Holding a glass, the prince complained that his guard's nervousness was starting to rub off on him. Shutra turned and praised Caitlin and Felicia, saying the two looked incredible in their dresses. Felicia took the credit with a smile, asking who else could have chosen the clothes, and Caitlin praised her choice. Satisfied, Felicia commented that all the effort had been worth it. Caitlin smiled at Shutra, saying he also looked great and that the suit fit him very well. A bit embarrassed, the prince thanked her and returned the compliment, stating that they also looked spectacular. Caitlin was happy with the comment, while Felicia merely agreed with an air of superiority. At that moment, Chris approached from behind, placed a hand on Shutra's shoulder, and asked if that was his first audience ceremony. With a smile, he pointed at him and said, today was his big debut, encouraging him to show himself to everyone in the castle. Shutra smiled back, agreeing with a confident look. As the great doors opened before them, he thought that some might consider his achievements mere strokes of luck. Still, he knew that soon all eyes in the great hall would be on him. The group walked toward the throne with serious and determined expressions. Shutra was certain that everyone there would finally pay attention to the useless prince they once despised. Upon approaching the throne, Chris was the first to kneel and introduce himself, formally announcing himself before the great ruler of the demon realm. Sitting on his imposing throne, Demon King Mitra observed the group in silence. An official beside him declared the start of the report on the achievements of the princes and princesses. Shutra stared at the figure of his father, and, with a slight tremor, realized he had forgotten a crucial detail. The king is the only person in that castle who must never be underestimated. In that instant, an overwhelming pressure hit him, making his eyes widen. The king's mere presence forced him to drop to his knees, feeling as if his body would shatter at any moment. A voice surfaced in his mind, commanding him to conquer. The memory echoed, stating that he too is a king. The Demon King stared at him with glowing eyes, and the voice instructed him to overcome that gaze. With his face contorted in effort, Shutra fought to endure the pressure and dominate it with his own will. A golden aura exploded from his body, pushing back the surrounding darkness. With his eyes shining intensely, he understood that this was the true power of conquest. The Demon King observed him with a slightly surprised expression. From atop the throne, the ruler called his name. Felicia, Chris, and Caitlin stared at him, completely shocked by his resistance. Shutra raised his head, still kneeling, and looked his father directly in the eye. The Demon King then declared that he looked forward eagerly to his future conquests. The nobles wonder what's happening, as His Majesty has never called a prince or princess by name during an audience. Chris wonders why the 9th prince, who barely has a presence, would be mentioned. It's a common statement, but one no one has ever heard from the Demon King, and that made it priceless. Shutra then promises to do everything he can to meet His Majesty's expectations. Outside, someone shouts for the prince to get up quickly. His servant enters the room and announces that a letter from the Office of Public Merits has just arrived. The young man takes the letter and wonders why the Office of Public Merits would send it. He then opens the letter. The servant asks him to read it aloud, but Shutra wonders how he should feel about this. He then reveals that the Demon King, his father, has given him a personal mission. The group gathers in a hall. Chris reads the letter and says it's a monster extermination quest to subjugate the Cassius horde, and Felicia adds that he'll be going to the Anger Plains. Shutra confirms that's where he's going, mentioning Chris has been there for training since the subjugation is an annual event. Felicia says she'd go with him if she could, but they have their own schedules, so Chris states that Shutra will be on his own. Chris then turns to Shutra. He warns him that from now on, people will start paying attention to him, and while some will try to get closer, others will be wary, so he'll have a lot to worry about. Shutra replies that he knows, recalling that not even Zephyr was called by name during an audience. Chris offers to help anytime, and the prince thanks him. Before leaving, he advises him to find Felicia, who has something for him. With her now, Felicia says he'll need a good pair of legs to travel through Centaur territory. She then offers the mounts to Shutra, who thanks her. Felicia hands him another item, and the young man asks what else there is. She shows him a necklace, revealing it to be the tear of the Dark Elf. Shutra recognizes the item as a sacred treasure that could normally only be obtained by killing Felicia herself. The elf explains that dark elves are a proud race that never forgets a kindness or a grudge. Then she hugs him and asks him to take care and come back safely. He starts to reply, but Felicia suddenly pushes him away. Felicia steps back and says it was nothing. Shutra then says his goodbyes, telling her to stay healthy until he returns. As the group departs, Felicia just says, okay. They arrive with an impact on the Anger Plains. Shutra and his group land at the location. The servant asks if they've arrived, and the prince confirms they have. A woman then greets them, addressing the 9th prince. Identifying herself as Karma, she introduces herself as the ranger assigned to guide them. Shutra also introduces himself and says it's a pleasure to meet her. Karma replies that the honor is all hers. He then suggests they leave immediately. Karma informs them it will take 2 days to reach the Centaur settlement with few stops, and Shutra agrees to the plan. The prince asks if there are any other soldiers, but she explains the mission came up suddenly, so it's just the 2 of them for now. She reassures him that they'll have the centaurs on their side, so they won't be at a numerical disadvantage. With that, the real problem becomes weaponry, and a spear might be the best option for a potential mounted battle. During the journey, the group stops upon hearing a noise. Karma wonders what that sound is, and tells them to wait as she will go check. The ranger runs to investigate the situation. Realizing it's the Cassius horde, she questions how they've already found them. Creatures advance. A centaur runs from the danger. A creature pursues it closely. The centaur looks back, frightened. Before it's caught, it's saved just in time. The centaur turns and sees Shutra on his mount. The prince faces the creatures and remarks that the welcoming committee has arrived early. He says it doesn't matter as he forms a gauntlet on his hand. Mounted on his creature, he states that he was looking forward to a fight. The prince challenges the creatures as the centaur asks who he is. The lead creature charges forward, leaping toward the prince. It tries to crush him. Shutra identifies it as the boss. Karma and his servant run toward him, warning him of the danger of advancing alone. He replies that he's fine and tells them to just watch. Deciding to test a new technique, he adjusts his stance. This is the art of the beast god fist he has been practicing. The creature charges with its mouth open. The young man prepares his fist for the attack. Then he unleashes the fist of explosion. Karma and the servant watch the scene. The blow hits the creature head on. Stopping over the defeated creature's body, he stares at the result. The other creatures in the pack retreat, facing the defeated creature. The centaur asks what that was all about. Shutra looks at his hand and says the blow was far more destructive than he expected. He then states that it was almost Caitlyn-level power. The servant and Karma congratulate him for destroying the creature in a single blow, and the centaur thanks him for saving them. The scout introduces himself as Swift Wind, saying he was sent to escort them and will guide them to the centaur settlement. They leave the creature's body behind. The group finally arrives at the centaur settlement on the Anger Plains. 4 centaur tribes inhabit the plains: the fierce wind, the heavy rain, the raging flame, and the restless night. A man welcomes the group, saying they must have had a difficult journey, and explains that the raging flame tribe is the most powerful. Identifying himself as Savage Eyes, he announces he is the great chief of the centaurs. The name is recognized. This encounter was inevitable, but as an enemy, not an ally. The servant comments on the chief's deadly gaze, but Shutra reminds him that he is the 9th prince. Savage Eyes observes him. The prince then asks to hear his assessment of the current situation. The centaur chief points to a map and says that, to be frank, the situation is not good. He explains that the Cassius horde, which should be to the north by now, has descended south much earlier than usual. Savage Eyes continues, saying his scouts are watching the area, assuming part of the horde might have gotten lost. He then states that in 3 days, the warriors of all 4 tribes will gather to crush the beasts. Shutra replies that he understands and will wait, asking if there's anything else. The chief then calls out to the 9th prince. He asks if it's true that the young man crushed Cassius's skull with a single punch. The prince confirms that yes, it's true, and even offers to show him later. Savage Eyes watches him for a moment, then he replies that he will look forward to it. That night, centaurs from the settlement gather around. They recognize the 9th prince as the one who crushed Cassius's skull in a single blow. The servant comments that he's quite popular, and Shutra agrees. He attributes the popularity to his natural charm and virtue, but soon realizes he probably shouldn't have said that. The servant then suggests that his highness should get some rest. The prince goes to bed and falls asleep. He sleeps soundly. He suddenly wakes up and sees the gauntlet on his arm. He then wonders how it got there. A voice calls him by name. 9th prince, Shutra Ignas. He looks at the figure before him. The floating woman says she needs his help. The young man asks who she is. Revealing herself as the fragment of the Watcher ankle, she takes the title of Green Wind. Green Wind is one of the nature spirits worshipped by the centaurs and satyrs. Thanks to Green Wind's power, the plains of fury remain green. She then transports him to a verdant landscape. The woman reveals that this place is her home. It's where the fragment of the Watcher ankle, her origin, resides. Shutra repeats the name and asks for a moment to process the information. Realizing that the Watcher ankle is one of the 6 elder dragons, he feels the weight of the revelation. Elder dragons are divine beings that players could never encounter in Night Saga. He wonders about the coincidence, having obtained Enkidu's power, and now meeting the Watcher ankle. Ankle says there's no time, as the monsters from the north are heading for her home. Their goal is to steal the green from the plains, destroy her home, and devour her soul. She claims he can protect the place, but the prince replies that his level is still too low for that. The woman then asks if he hasn't already obtained the power of Enkidu. Reassuring him, she says not to worry, as Ankle's fragment will make him even stronger. Ankle instructs him to first show that symbol to her children, and then the prince returns to his room. Upon waking, Shutra finds an object in his hand. Ankle's voice tells him that they will surely lend him their strength. Outside, the prince wonders about the meaning of it all. Shutra then warns Savage Eyes that Lord Green Wind is in danger, and that the Cassius horde will attack a small temple to the northeast. The prince insists they gather their men and leave immediately, but the chief hesitates to march based on his word alone. Savage Eyes then notices the object in the young man's hand. Shutra shows him the sacred relic of Lord Green Wind. Convinced, the centaur chief asks what must be done. The centaur army then prepares for battle. Shutra rides alongside the warriors. Using a map to guide them, he announces that he can already see the location. Ahead of them is the Temple of Green Wind. One of the scouts points the way for the chief, saying he never would have found the place without the map. They observe the field ahead. An immense horde from the Cassius tribe already surrounds the temple. Shutra realizes there's definitely something going on that he doesn't know about. The centaur chief remarks that the number of enemies is greater than he thought, and asks if the prince has a plan. Shutra remembers Green Wind telling him to get power from Ankle's fragment, and concludes there must be something in the temple. He informs them he's going to the temple, and asks them not to let the enemies get close, and Savage Eyes agrees. The prince then calls Karak and Karma to go with him, and they affirm. Savage Eyes orders his warriors not to let a single enemy enter the temple. He commands all units to prepare for battle. The centaur army charges to attack. Archers ready their bows and take aim. Arrows strike the horde of creatures. Centaur warriors advance against the enemies. One of them attacks 2 of the creatures with his sword. As the battle rages on, Shutra and his group ride towards the temple. Karak asks if they just need to get him to the temple, and the prince confirms. The servant then declares that they will clear a path for the prince no matter what. Karak charges forward with his weapon to attack the creatures. He clears a path through the enemies with a single blow. Karma also fights, facing 2 beasts at once. Shutra observes that his team is doing very well. As they advance, he realizes they're almost at the temple. Suddenly, a giant club comes down towards him. A huge creature attacks violently. The blow hits his mount and throws him far. The monster then rises before him. The creature advances towards him. Shutra gets up and admits he let his guard down, but Karak intercepts the next attack, blocking the club with his weapon. The servant asks if the prince is alright. Then he tells him to get up, saying it's too early to be sleeping. The giant beast charges at him. Its weapon collides violently with Karak's defense. He struggles to hold back the creature's immense strength. Shutra casually asks if he's done after such a cool performance. Declaring under the king's banner, the prince grants power to his companion from above. He announces that the real attack begins now. Karak then repels the beast's attack with renewed strength. His opponent shows complete surprise at the sudden change. Karak counterattacks with a powerful blow of his own. He shouts the name Kurara. The orc continues his relentless assault on the creature, and he finishes with a downward strike using all his might. With one final blow, Karak shatters the ground beneath his feet. The orc then tells the prince to go on ahead, and Shutra replies that he's counting on him. He runs at high speed towards a large, ancient temple. Then Shutra enters the main hall through the massive front door. A voice urges him on, and he recognizes it as Green Winds. Enkidu's armament materializes on his arm to guide him. The energy emanating from his hand points deeper into the temple. A trail of leaves guides him through the dark corridors. He arrives at a giant tree growing in the center of the structure. Leaves fall around him as he gazes at the immense tree. A branch extends from the tree, offering him an object. Shutra stares at the artifact presented to him. He recognizes it as a dragon heart. Then he questions if this is Ankel's fragment. Ankel appears before him, explaining that the Plains of Fury have maintained peace for ages through her magic as the observer. Ainkel explains that the temple is the center of her magic, and if it's destroyed, the peace will be broken. She then asks Shutra to awaken the ancient magic remaining in the temple to stop them. Outside, Savage Eyes orders his men not to retreat and to block the enemy's entry. Karak continues to fight the beasts in his path. Karma also defends himself bravely against multiple opponents. Ainkel says she is counting on the 9th prince. She asks him to use the magic she left behind to protect the Plains of Fury and its children. Shutra then places his hand on the dragon heart. A large amount of power begins to flow through him. He reacts to the sudden influx of energy. The young man finds himself before a colossal dragon under a starry sky. He recognizes the creature as Ankel the Observer. She instructs him to take the power offered. Shutra is then imbued with the ancient magic. An immense pillar of power erupts from the top of the temple. In the midst of battle, Karak finds himself surrounded by enemies. He looks towards the temple and calls out for the prince. Gigantic roots sprout from the ground, ensnaring Savage Eyes and his men. The allies watch the enormous roots emerging around the temple. The ground cracks and more roots surge throughout the area. 3 giant wooden golems rise from the earth. A group of beasts prepares to attack. The golems advance and attack the creatures. One of the golems smashes a beast with its powerful arm. The forest guardians continue to fight the enemies. Ainkel announces it is done. The ancient magic of Ainkel has awakened. She sincerely thanks the 9th prince. Shutra keeps his hand on the dragon heart. He begins to absorb the artifact's energy. Ainkel recoils in surprise and asks what is happening. She questions why Ainkel's magical power is flowing into him as Shutra continues to absorb it. Ainkel asks if he's trying to absorb Ainkel's power right now. Shutra's body reacts to the immense amount of power he is absorbing. She approaches him and tells him to stop, as his body won't be able to handle it. With a gleam in his eyes, he receives a notification that his level has increased. Wounds on his face begin to slowly fade. Ankel notices in surprise that his injuries are healing. As more level up notifications appear, he continues to absorb the power. A mysterious voice orders him to conquer. It continues, saying to subjugate and make them kneel in obedience, even if it's the remnant of an ancient dragon. A hand clenches into a tight fist. A figure states that it will kneel before him. The dragon heart then merges into Shutra's chest. An explosion of energy erupts from the great tree. The tree then calms, and the hall falls silent. Shutra stands, panting, as the residual energy dissipates around him. A voice calls him the Knight of Conquest, and he gets a notification he's obtained the passive skill, Dragon Body. New notifications appear, informing him he has acquired the skills Dragon Blood and Poison Immunity. A status screen displays his new information, including the Dragonborn subclass, which confuses him. The description explains that a Dragonborn is a being who has awakened the dragon gene and can use its magic. Zephyr's recessive inheritance allowed him to awaken the dragon gene, despite being a hybrid. Ainkel states that he has truly obtained the spirit and body of a dragon, and she can feel the observer's power within him. She continues, saying she isn't disappointed, as it was a power no one could use, sealed for a millennium. She thus declares him the successor to Einkel the Observer, and states she now has only one wish. She also asks if he can protect the Engel Plains and its children. With a determined look, he answers, "Yes, of course." Outside, the battle between the golems and the beasts rages on. The golems begin to be overwhelmed and destroyed by the enemies. Beasts advance on the weakened wooden guardians. Shutra observes the battle from above and identifies the one responsible for commanding the Cassius. Shutra leaps from the parapet towards the battlefield. He lands in the middle of the enemies and tells Karak there's something he needs to do. Meanwhile, the giant beast continues to destroy the wooden golems. The creature lets out a powerful roar. Its gaze then turns to a new target. Shutra charges forward and lands a direct punch to the monster's chest. He leaps back to dodge a counterattack, commenting that the creature is surprisingly agile. The beast's attack misses by a hair, clearing a patch of ground. Then Shutra challenges it to try blocking the next blow as well. He meets the creature's fist with his explosion fist. Shutra's hand is encased in a stone gauntlet. He is pushed back by the force of the impact, questioning the thickness of the creature's hide. The monster attacks the spot where he was with a crushing blow. Shutra dodges and realizes his previous attack didn't work, as the enemy is tougher than he expected. He then prepares to show something new. Shutra invokes Dragon Blood, activating an exclusive skill for Dragonborns. His weapon, the Shaker, then releases part of its true power. He declares he'll bet everything on this single blow. The creature charges at him as he prepares his attack. Then Shutra announces that it's now Karak's turn. With the order to summon the king's knights, Karak suddenly appears behind the beast. The orc strikes it with a powerful blow to the back of the head. The giant creature reacts to the surprise attack. Shutra warns it to look forward to what's coming next. The beast stares at him intently. The prince then declares that this time will be completely different from the last. He prepares to use the Shaker's secret art. A massive attack is fired toward his opponent. Savage Eyes and his men watch as Shutra's attack hits the giant beast head-on. The centaur chief remains with a determined look. Karak observes the result of the assault. The monster's body then breaks apart into pieces before Shutra. He receives a notification that his level has increased. The screen informs him he has defeated the boss, Drake Ogre Mustafa. He then acquires the title Drake Ogre Slayer. Shutra wonders about the amount of power he used, stating he would have fainted if he hadn't leveled up. He concludes that wasn't the Shaker's true ultimate technique, as there's an even greater one. Karak runs to inform the prince that some enemies are fleeing now that their leader has fallen. Savage Eyes charges and attacks the remaining creatures with a spinning blow. He orders his men to pursue them, as they will attack again if they escape. The centaur chief shouts not to let any escape and to kill them all. As night falls, the battlefield in front of the temple is littered with defeated enemies. The victors then gather to celebrate around a bonfire, with Karak and Karma toasting together. Einkel approaches Shutra, and seeing he seems to be enjoying himself, asks what brings him here. He replies that he came because he had some questions for Greenwind, and she agrees to answer whatever he wants. But first, she asks him to release her from his control, leaving him confused. She explains that because he absorbed Enkel's mana, she is now bound to him, and he agrees to resolve the situation. The two fall silent for a moment, then Shutra admits with an awkward smile that he doesn't know how to do that. Enkel questions him about what he just asked. She calls him a temporary master and asks why he acted like he knew, and he replies that he was never taught. Shutra asks her to calm down so they can think and asks about her current condition. She declares she is his, and therefore obeys him. He rephrases the question, asking if she feels uncomfortable or if there have been any changes, but she denies it. Enkel adds that if she disappears, the Engel Plains will lose their vitality. He ponders the situation for a moment. Shutra then suggests that she simply remain in the Engel Plains instead of coming with him. He states there's no need for her to accompany him, and she stares at him with a surprised expression. Enkel asks if he is abandoning her. Shutra denies it and asks if she wants to go with him, but Enkel states that it's natural to accompany him since he is her master. He then realizes he has accidentally formed a spiritual contract. The prince asks if she is the personification of the spell over the plains, and she confirms it. He then asks if she can create something to take her place. She replies that it will take time, but it's possible, and Shutra says she can accompany him once it's done. Enkel warns that to do this, she will need to leave most of her power behind. He smiles and says that's no problem, as forming a contract with a high-ranking spirit like her is already a great opportunity. She calls him master, and Shutra says that with that settled, he'll ask his questions. The prince then questions her about how and when Enkel died. The question surprises her. She explains that she is just a fragment and doesn't possess many of Enkel's memories. However, she remembers that 1,000 years ago, Enkel was murdered. She doesn't recall the murderer, but is certain it wasn't another ancient dragon. Shutra is shocked, questioning who could kill an ancient dragon with divine powers. Enkel asks her master to speak with her casually, as she feels uncomfortable with the formality. Shutra then questions if, as Ankle's successor, he can also contain the power of another ancient dragon. She replies that while it's usually impossible, for him, it might be possible. Ankle explains that he already possesses the opposing powers of Ankle and Enkidu, and if he can balance them, he might be able to use the power of other dragons. Surprised by the possibility, he decides to ask one last question. Shutra asks if she knows anything about the power he possesses. She reiterates that, as said before, she doesn't retain all of Ankle's memories. Then Ankle states that her knowledge of his power is incomplete. An intense light begins to emanate from her. He wonders what is suddenly happening. She addresses the Knight of Conquest, born under the destiny of kings. A voice declares that he will conquer and rule all creation, for that is the power of the king. Ankle then states that this power will be his. A new day begins. Then Shutra plummets from a great height towards the forest. He wakes up on the ground, confused by the situation. His last memory is of talking with Green Wind. Ankle then appears and asks if her master is regaining consciousness. She explains that her consciousness, which remained in him, surfaced last night, causing him to pass out. In a vision, an entity leans over the sleeping young prince. It speaks of the Knight of Conquest, born under the destiny of kings to rule all creation, and it declares that this power will now be his. Shutra realizes that Ankle already knew about his power as a king and Knight of Conquest. She states that he is her master for eternity and needs to tell him something she didn't mention yesterday. Suddenly, a map manifests around him. Ankle reveals that one of her relics is in the far north of the Engel Plains. She continues, explaining that the Shield of Life, an artifact with the power of an ancient dragon, rests there. She tells him that over 1,000 years ago, she granted the shield to the bravest centaur warrior, who achieved countless victories without a single injury. But the warrior wasn't truly invincible, as he was killed in his bed by a woman sent by someone who coveted the artifact. Since no one but its owner could wield the Shield of Life, the warrior's followers buried it with him in his tomb in the north. Centuries passed, and the shield became a legend, with the centaurs naming it after the warrior himself. Ankle then reveals that the shield's new name was White Suri. Shutra recognizes the name as that of the legendary artifact that only appears in the Knight's Saga backstory. He realizes that not even veteran players like him could find the best shield of all. Ankle asks if her master knows of it. With a smile, the young prince asks where the tomb is located, and she replies that he can find it in the far north of the Engel Plains. But Ankle states she first needs to create a substitute for herself, and will begin as soon as their conversation ends. He asks how long it will take to make another of her, and the entity explains it should take about 2 days. Shutra then declares they will leave in 2 days, as covering the distance isn't impossible. He is determined to go, as getting the White Suri will make things much easier. For his journey north, the prince plans to use the pretext of hunting the remaining members of the Cassius group. The problem is that the protection spell activated in the temple must have already been detected by the Demon King's castle. If the report is sent today, an expert will arrive within a week to inspect the ruins. Just as Shutra decides it's better to leave before they arrive, Savage Eyes informs him someone from the Demon King's castle has arrived. The prince can hardly believe they've arrived already. Moments later, he enters the main hall. Seeing him, Felicia turns and asks what's wrong with his face. She then comments that he looks like he's seen a ghost. Shutra, surprised, asks Felicia why she is here. Karak interrupts, suggesting they at least exchange greetings first. A young elf approaches and bows, declaring it an honor to meet the 9th prince. Then she introduces herself as Daphne, daughter of Echo, the 5th concubine. He immediately recognizes her as Daphne, the druid born of a dryad. She is one of the 3 half-siblings he must protect at all costs. Felicia explains that she is an exceptional druid and will be useful, and Daphne says it's a pleasure to work with them. Shutra decides he needs to make a good impression on her. He then questions Felicia about her trip to the Gishka Mountains, but she replies that he finished the mission too quickly. She approaches him and warns that he's drawing too much attention. Karak adds that while the subjugation of Cassius wasn't a difficult mission, finishing it in 2 days instead of the normal 2 weeks changes everything. Felicia explains that since many irregular events occurred, everyone was shocked, and someone else would have come to interrogate him. Shutra then asks if that's why she came instead of another. She admits it wasn't just for that, but also because she was curious about the temple's magic and the change in the Cassius's behavior. The young prince simply thanks her for worrying about him. Next, Felicia asks what his plan is now. He declares he will explore the northern region to see if any members of the Cassius group remain, and to find the White Suri. Savage Eyes then states he will go with him, as it's his duty as the tribe's chief. Shutra agrees that it makes sense, and Felicia also announces she will go. She justifies it by saying it's better to study a living Cassius than a dead one. The prince accepts their company, even though the hunt was just an excuse. Karak observes the situation, feeling that things are about to get complicated. Elsewhere, a monstrous creature advances. Karak and his companions prepare for combat. The orc declares he knew this would happen. He then shouts that his instincts were right as the battle begins. The group of warriors charges forward, facing the creatures in fierce combat. Suddenly, one of the monsters surprises Shutra from behind. He turns and attacks the creature, questioning where they all suddenly came from. The prince wonders if they didn't kill them all last time, as new winged enemies appear on the battlefield. Flying creatures advance toward the group. Shutra identifies them as Geists and considers them a troublesome bunch. Then he declares that they are not the only ones who can fly. Using the blessing of the wind, the young prince begins to levitate. Enkel appears surprised and questions how he can use her magic. He swiftly advances toward the flying monsters. One of the creatures stares at him, caught off guard by his aerial attack. With a single punch, he hits the monster in mid-flight. The impact sends the creature flying far into the horizon. The prince then orders them to stop getting in his way and just disappear. Little Enkel just watches the situation in silence. In the middle of the forest, Daphne walks alone. Suddenly she stops, feeling watched. A winged monster then attacks her from behind, but Karak grabs her and pulls her away from danger. He throws her aside as the monster charges at him. Felicia then prepares an attack, stating that the situation is convenient. She unleashes her power on the creatures, declaring that she was planning to find them anyway. Her ability strikes the battlefield. Soon, all the monsters are defeated, and the group gathers. Felicia then asks Shutra to observe the creatures' bodies. She points out that it's likely some kind of curse magic. The elf explains that while the monsters grew stronger, their life force was consumed, and their emotions seem to have been severed. She concludes that someone was controlling them. Shutra is confused, as they had already defeated the one manipulating them before. Karak then interrupts and calls his attention to Daphne. He comments that the girl was tense throughout the fight, as it might have been her first real battle. Shutra notices that Daphne seems much less experienced than the one he knew. She feels the spirit's fear and states that the sinister power grows stronger the further north they go. Enkel also senses an energy coming from the north and suggests there might be an entity as the source of it all. Savage Eyes believes they'll learn more if they go to the northernmost point, and Shutra suggests they check the observation tower. Although he only planned to retrieve the White Suri, he agrees with the plan, as things have become more complicated. The group then decides to head for the tower for now. At dusk, they finally reach the observation tower. Once at the top, everyone observes the horizon in the indicated direction. Felicia points to a massive concentration of creatures, estimating there are 200 to 300 of them. She explains that only a high-ranking undead, at least at the level of a lich, could gather so many. Daphne suddenly falls to the ground. Karak supports her and asks if she's all right, and the young woman confirms she is. Felicia then explains that since she is half-spirit, the sinister energy affects her deeply. Karak suggests it would be better to retreat for now, as their current forces won't be enough. Suddenly, Felicia turns with a surprised expression. She then announces that someone is coming toward them. Shutra activates a map, questioning who could be approaching. On the map, he observes his allies' position surrounded by enemies. Karak then alerts him to look at the sky. He points out that something is flying towards them. The prince watches the projectiles approaching rapidly. He yells that it's a trap and orders everyone out of the tower. Multiple explosions then completely destroy the tower. Karak reacts amidst the destruction. The tower's debris falls as the horde of undead watches from a distance. In the midst of the chaos, Felicia prepares a spell. She then uses her wind control to protect everyone from the debris. The tower's wreckage falls safely around the group. Felicia approaches Shutra and asks if he's okay. Savage Eyes thanks the sixth princess, but she states it's not time for thanks yet. The elf points to the horde of enemies and says they need to escape. Shutra comments that they already seem to be surrounded, but Felicia asks for a moment. She declares she will find a way to clear a path. The young prince watches Felicia concentrate. He then unsheathes his dagger and says he will hold them off as long as he can. Shutra raises his dagger and activates an ability on his allies. Savage Eyes feels the strength suddenly coursing through his entire body. Enkel asks if her master truly intends to fight, and he confirms it. The prince then states that, for now, all they can do is trust Felicia. His gauntlet materializes on his hand. He then orders everyone to prepare for battle. The group takes their positions, facing the approaching horde of undead. Shutra declares that they will not be forced to retreat. Karak charges forward and attacks the enemies with his weapon. Savage Eyes also joins the fray, taking down the skeletons in front of him. Felicia then unleashes her power, disintegrating several enemies at once. The remains of the undead fall scattered on the ground, but a lone skull floats in the air. The young prince watches the scene, panting. The skeletons begin to rebuild themselves, and he realizes that at this rate, it will never end. A horde of skeletons advances on the prince and his allies. He states they need to find the leader controlling the monsters quickly to have any hope. Suddenly, a shower of projectiles descends from the sky onto the battlefield. The attack indiscriminately hits both allies and the undead. One of the centaurs is caught off guard by the sudden attack. The barrage continues, hitting everyone on the battlefield. One of the orcs falls defeated amidst the chaos. Among the fallen, an imposing armored figure rises. A skeletal knight stands over the wreckage. Shutra finally spots him and identifies him as the leader. Savage Eyes then leaps onto the knight, delivering a blow with his sword. He braces for impact as he charges the enemy, but the knight blocks the attack and hurls him away with a counterattack. Karak seizes the opportunity and charges the leader. His attack is also blocked by the skeletal knight. Karak is pushed back by the force of the blow. The skeletal knight then counters with a swing of its sword. The impact sends the orc flying into the rubble. Shutra appears in the air, thanking the enemy for coming straight to him. With his gauntlet activated, he advances and declares that this ends now. His fist strikes the knight's chest squarely. The young prince recoils in surprise at the result. The knight then grabs him and throws him to the ground. Fallen, Shutra questions the strength of this opponent. He admits the enemy is too strong for them to handle. Felicia approaches and tells Shutra that's enough and he can rest now. The skeletal knight observes the newcomer. Shutra looks at the elf, surprised by her intervention. Surrounded by her magic, she declares that from now on, the fight is hers. Felicia then challenges the skeleton to combat. Felicia floats in the air and casts a spell. An explosion hits the skeletal knight head-on. The knight reacts to the impact of the attack. He then leaps toward her for a counterattack, but Felicia uses her wind control to stop him in midair. The knight is repelled by the force of the magic. She then vanishes in an instant and reappears above the knight, who looks up at her in surprise. Felicia strikes him with a new attack directly on the head. The blow knocks him back while Shutra watches from below. The young prince observes Felicia, who has single-handedly overpowered the monster. Suddenly, his gaze shifts to the side. Daphne approaches and asks if His Highness is all right. She then unleashes her power, enveloping all allies on the battlefield. Savage Eyes and Karak are enveloped by her magic. Karak reacts to the new sensation in his body. Shutra recognizes the Dryad's area of effect buff and states that Daphne is finally contributing. Suddenly, a notification for Boost Levite 1 activated appears beside him. Surprised, the young prince finds himself surrounded by strange orbs. Then he is completely enveloped by a new energy. He acquires the ability Spiritual Awakening Leviot 1. Power courses through his entire body, enhancing all his abilities. He realizes that the spirit of life and the spirit of wind now inhabit his body at the same time. Meanwhile, Felicia continues her attack against the knight. The combat leaves her breathless. The knight attacks, but she disappears to avoid the blow. She prepares a new attack in her hands. The elf glares at him, calling him a persistent bastard, and she launches her final attack, ordering him to just die. But something unexpected happens, leaving her surprised. Boosted by the power, Karak charges forward with a cry. He then intercepts the knight's attack that was aimed at Felicia. The skeletal knight turns, caught off guard by the intervention. Shutra and Karma appear in the air, and the prince congratulates Felicia on a job well done. The elf looks at him upon hearing his voice. He then declares that the final blow will be his. The prince strikes the knight's head with an explosive punch. The impact throws the creature back, unbalancing it. Karak celebrates that they can win, but Shutra asserts it was his fist that defeated it. The orc then moves to cut off the enemy's head himself. Suddenly, he stops his movement. The knight counterattacks and sends Karak flying. Shutra shouts his ally's name. The prince is hit by the shockwave. He then watches the scene, a mark forming on his face. Felicia observes the battlefield, confused by the sudden fall of her allies. She looks at the scene before her in disbelief. An imposing skeletal knight stands over Shutra, and Felicia screams his name. Far away, the forest remains silent under the night sky. Then Einkel flies hastily through the trees. She stops suddenly, having located her objective. The small creature finally finds the warrior's tomb on a floating island. There rests the sword that marks the final resting place. Strange pillars rise from a devastated land under a starry sky. Felicia floats amidst the chaos, questioning what is happening around her. She then denies the reality of the situation. Felicia screams Shutra's name, who lies fallen before an immense armored figure. The giant knight prepares to attack. Its skeletal face turns toward the young man. Felicia warns him for looking away when she is his opponent. She then declares that his enemy is her, and she fires a triple attack at the knight. The blow strikes him directly in the chest, but her attack is intercepted by other projectiles on the way. The knight then suddenly appears in front of Felicia. He moved in the blink of an eye, and he attacks her with a powerful downward strike. The impact of the attack hits her squarely. Felicia calls him a bastard. The giant knight then punches the ground hard. His blow shatters the ground around him. A horde of monsters then surrounds Felicia. Shutra remains fallen in the distance. A voice tells its master to get up, stating it's no time to be on the ground. Shutra finds himself standing in an unknown place. Einkel appears and urges him to awaken his power, the green wind. He asks what she is talking about and how he could awaken such a power. Something manifests above him, and he looks up. She tells him to remember, for he already knows the answer. Back on the battlefield, Shutra utters, "Dragon blood." Then something descends from the sky towards the ground. The creatures around Felicia look up. She also raises her gaze. Einkel appears and attacks the monsters. Einkel's attack continues to sweep across the battlefield. Her assault culminates in a large explosion that hits the creatures. Shutra supports himself on the ground and questions what just happened. A shield called White Suri materializes before him. He asks how Green Wind did that, and the creature explains she sought out the tomb where the shield was. Greenwind admits it was reckless, but she managed to make White Suri recognize a new master. The young man looks at the creature, who tells him to accept the praise later. For now, they need to deal with the creature right in front of them. Back in reality, Shutra is thrown back by a blow from the knight, but the armored figure is suddenly unbalanced and knocked aside. The young man charges toward his opponent, telling him to wait. The knight prepares a concentrated attack in its mouth. Shutra is surprised by the speed of the attack about to be fired. The blow is finally launched in his direction. Felicia screams Shutra's name as the now headless knight remains standing. The giant knight's head regenerates, and Shutra charges toward it. The young man then raises his shield to protect himself. He questions the energy he feels, and Greenwind explains that Ankel's fragment transformed his body into a dragonborn. The creature continues, saying a new power has been added to his body and asks if he can feel it. Ankel's magic, preserved for years within White Suri, begins to flow. Then a powerful attack hits the knight's chest. Shutra confirms he feels the power, describing it as insane in the best way possible. The knight glares at him. Shutra calls him bonehead and challenges him to keep thinking he's the strongest, because this time, he will destroy him completely. Shutra ponders how to use his new power. He then fires an attack at the horde, questioning if this was how it was supposed to be. The blow hits several creatures at once. The druid observes the scene, surprised by what is happening. The giant knight roars and raises its sword. It then attacks a small object that was thrown far away. Its blow hits the shield's gem. The gem shatters into several pieces. The fragments of the gem then float in the air. Shutra suddenly appears under the knight's chin, asking where he's looking, and hits him with an explosive punch to the chin. The giant knight takes the impact of the blow. He counters, preparing fireballs in his hands. The spheres explode, but Shutra defends himself with his shield. The young man extends his hand to prepare a new attack. A projectile hits the knight directly in the chest. The shield is then thrown like a boomerang. It strikes the knight multiple times at high speed. The creature roars as it's hit by the attacks. Shutra leaps toward his opponent. He then prepares a powerful punch, called the Gigantic Piston, and hits him squarely in the chest with the blow. The giant knight roars from the impact of the attack. Shutra then declares that this will end it all, and he points two fingers toward his enemy. The shot hits the knight's head, causing an explosion. Even without a head, the creature raises one of its hands. The skeletons around look up, and an explosion occurs in the middle of the horde. A notification informs him he has defeated Skeleton King Valkaroba and leveled up twice. He scoffs at his enemy, who thought he was so powerful but was nothing special, and receives the title King Slayer. Felicia warns that the curse has been lifted and suggests they leave while the monsters fight each other, with Shutra agreeing. Later, the group rests around a bonfire in the forest. Felicia asks if that is the White Suri, and the young man confirms it. Savage Eyes and Karak are impressed by the truth of the legend. Daphne then explains that the shield emits a powerful life force and has not yet revealed its full power. Shutra concludes that the White Suri is limiting its power to match him, and he can't wait to see how strong the shield will become. Felicia tells him the shield belongs to him, and she won't report it, asking him to take good care of it. The young man thanks her. Savage Eyes addresses the 9th prince and recognizes him as the successor of the great warrior White Suri. He then promises they will join Shutra whenever he calls them. Shutra replies that he will count on them, noting that everything has worked out well once again. But then he remembers something he almost forgot. Back at the Great Warrior's tomb, he says the fun part of collecting the items still remains. He opens a treasure chest, but declares it's not over yet. Einkel appears behind him, complaining that he hasn't praised her yet, and the young man just realizes. Einkel questions how he could forget something so important, and Shutra apologizes. He then pats her on the head, saying she did a great job and they won because of her. Einkel decides to forgive him just this once. In return, she demands that he praise her much more. Shutra agrees and praises her, saying she is the best. And so, the incident in the northern region came to an end. But something still bothers him, questioning if Valkaroba was the true cause of the death energy. He wonders why Valkaroba tried to attack the north, and how he discovered the secret of the small shrine. The young man stares at the horizon. Nothing is certain yet, but he promises himself that one day he will discover the true identity of the death energy. After returning from the northern frontier, everyone's life became busier and passed quickly. Savage Eyes was preparing to lead his tribe's warriors and head north, as the mission to exterminate the Cassius herd was underway. Shutra also went north with him, and it took about half a month to eradicate the herd. A stone tower rose against the blue sky. Felicia wonders if it's just her imagination. Then she comments to Shutra that she feels he has gotten stronger, and he replies that he's in his growth period. The young man asks how the temple investigation went, and Felicia says it went well. Then she reveals she made a huge discovery. The magic placed in the temple belonged to none other than Einkel, one of the 6 ancient dragons. Shutra reacts to the news, saying it's incredible. Felicia observes his expression and questions if he already knew, but he denies it, stating it's the first time he's heard of it. Green Wind whispers that her master is acting strangely, and Shutra decides it's better to hurry and make the report. They arrive at the Demon King's castle. Other elves greet Felicia warmly the moment she arrives. She asks if they have all been well, and if they have eaten. Karak comments that the place is still the same, and Shutra agrees. As Green Wind despairs, the young man says it seems they were the only things that changed. Karak asks the prince if he did something wrong, noticing the stares around them. 2 succubi stare at them from an upper balcony. Shutra recognizes them and wonders if they are from Anastasia's people. They belong to one of the 3 main factions in the kingdom. The faction is led by the 4th princess, Anastasia Necreon, and even Felicia was once part of it. Receiving so much attention, Shutra tells Karak he'd better get used to it. Then he states they will receive even more attention from now on. They head to the Office of Public Merits. Supervisor Isabella informs him that his merit level has risen to 10, increasing his pay and access to facilities. Then she announces he can now access the treasury vault. The young man decides it's been a while, so it's time to spend some money. In the armory, they explain that his merit level 10 allows him to use the first treasury vault. Supervisor Igor comments that although weapons cost merit points, they can also be bought with gold. The supervisor asks His Highness to take his time. Shutra tells Karak to pick whatever he needs, leaving the orc surprised. Explaining that the stronger the equipment, the more useful Karak will be. He watches his companion run to choose. Shutra decides one shouldn't skimp on equipment and selects a piece for himself. The armor offers resistance to elemental attacks and doesn't interfere with his martial arts. With that settled, he states there's only one last thing. At the forge, Supervisor Kador asks if he's referring to greaves. The young man explains that common greaves hinder his martial arts and questions how long the crafting will take. Kador states he can finish in 2 days, so Shutra asks about recommended materials. The blacksmith suggests using dragon leather and scales. Shutra wants to know where he could get something so rare, but Kador explains that materials in His Highness's name arrived today, and he was thinking of using them. The young man asks what he means by materials that arrived in his name. Kador reveals that Lord Ishugard ordered the dragon leather and scales to be delivered directly to him. Ishugard, the greatest swordsman in the demon realm, the Sword Lord. He is an elder of the most powerful warrior race, the Asura, and the legendary warrior who taught the sword to the demon king Mitra. Karak questions why someone so legendary would help him, but Shutra doesn't know the answer. The young man wonders if he's just reacting to the interest the demon king has shown in him. An attendant runs towards them, bringing urgent news for the 9th prince. Shutra asks why he's running like that and what happened. The man announces there will be an audience ceremony the next morning, and the young man is surprised it's happening again. The attendant explains the audience is to honor the 3 contributors, and Shutra asks who the 3rd is besides himself and Felicia. Then he reveals it is the 2nd prince. Zephyr Ragnaros has returned. An attendant announces that the 2nd prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, has returned. Karak turns to Shutra, who ignores him. He recalls the 2nd prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, the man who would kill everyone, and eventually himself. Shutra wonders if he will see him here. The audience would take place at the Demon King's castle. Karak asks the prince if he's really okay. He then comments that Shutra has seemed unwell since yesterday. The young man clasps his hands, admitting he never imagined he'd be this nervous. Karak asks about the other prince's arrival, and an attendant informs him that he will enter directly. Felicia appears, commenting that Zephyr is special in many ways. She tells Shutra that the merit he earned is also significant. The elf encourages him not to be discouraged by it. With a smile, she suggests they show everyone their best. A herald announces the start of the audience ceremony. The Demon King waits on his throne in the Great Hall. From his position, he watches the group approaching. The entrance of the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade, and the 9th prince, Shutra Ignas, is announced. Shutra wonders how he'll handle what's to come if he's already this nervous. He then lifts his gaze to the nobles watching them from the balcony. Anastasia, the 4th princess, is among the spectators. She watches him from above. The young man composes himself, as this is a mountain he always knew he would have to climb. The supervisor announces that the next prince will enter. Then, the entrance of the 2nd prince, Zephyr Ragnaros, is declared as he appears as a silhouette in the doorway. Shutra faces him, aware that they have finally met. The protagonist of the Demon Realm arc, the 2nd prince, walks toward the throne. Zephyr Ragnaros finally reveals his face. Supervisor Isabella announces they will review the achievements of the princes and the princess. Zephyr's accomplishments were impressive, enough to justify the ceremony on their own. Afterward, Shutra and Felicia's achievements are announced, drawing everyone's attention. But that wasn't the highlight of the day. The Demon King addresses Shutra and says he will grant him a mission. The announcement surprises those present in the throne room. Zephyr hears the king's declaration. It was an unprecedented situation. The young prince questions what he heard, as the Demon King personally assigned him a mission during the ceremony. His mission is to explore the Thunder Fortress, protecting the newly discovered passage and investigating its interior. He has 7 days to depart and recognizes the name Thunder Fortress. It was one of the main fortresses of the Dwarven Kingdom in the game he knew. The mission previously failed when General Kashubal died from toxic gas poisoning. Therefore, His Highness must prepare adequate countermeasures to finally secure the fortress. The young prince wonders what the hell is happening. They're giving him a mission that even a general of draconic descent failed. Instead of assigning it to Zephyr, Shutra feels that something is very wrong. Felicia then points to him and asks if he thinks he might have angered her father. He doesn't understand what she means, and she explains that normally Zephyr would take responsibility for a mission like this. Karak comments that it must be an incredibly difficult mission, and Felicia agrees it's too dangerous for Shutra. She asks if he thinks so too, and the young man simply agrees. Felicia decides to go with him and invites him to go together. Felicia says that since it's Shutra's request, she'll accompany him, but tells Karak to shut up for his comment. The prince thanks her, confirming they'll go together. Just then, a young man approaches and offers to join them on the mission. He addresses the 4th prince, asking if his presence would be acceptable. Felicia recognizes him, calling him Kadarov, but Shutra refuses the offer, explaining that the mission members have already been chosen. Kadarov takes his leave, apologizing for the intrusion. Felicia questions Shutra's decision, arguing he would be useful as a competent and rare male siren. And indeed, he is one of the strongest magic-type sirens in existence. Kadarov suddenly vanishes. He is revealed to be a secret follower of Anastasia, a fanatic with infiltration and espionage skills, who steps forward to report. The fact they sent Kadarov shows they are extremely concerned. The question is directed at Anastasia, who raises her glass. She comments that he seems much more cautious than expected. Felicia asks Shutra what he knows about the Thunder Fortress. He mentions that hot-blooded dwarves fought against dragons, and she explains to Karak that there's more than one dwarven nation. Then, Felicia continues, saying that the High Kingdom of the Dwarves, to which the fortress belonged, fought to protect their cities and treasures, even managing to take down multiple dragons. Karak asks if the princess can also kill dragons, and she replies that she can, given enough time and resources. He concludes that she can't, and Felicia scolds him, asking if he thinks dragons are common monsters. Karak praises her for her vast knowledge, recalling that even that great kingdom was destroyed in the war against the dragons. She boasts, stating that the Thunder Fortress is constantly mentioned in studies of dwarven relics. With a smile, Felicia says that if they excavate the site properly, they'll find a fortune. Karak points out that the princess is drooling while Shutra sleeps in the armchair. In Night Saga, the Thunder Fortress is one of the famous honeypot dungeons, as high-quality treasures and weapons remain untouched inside. But more importantly, that fortress contains something Shutra desperately needs right now. A weapon specialized in killing dragons, fatal to those with draconic lineage, the Dragon Slayer sword. To fight Zephyr, who carries dragon's blood, he must obtain it at all costs. They arrive at the fortress entrance. A pair of A-rank dragon scale boots is displayed. Shutra expresses his satisfaction with the new gear. Then he asks if everyone is ready for the mission. With a mask covering his face, the prince orders the group to advance. They enter a long, arched corridor of the fortress. The group walks together through the dungeon's interior. Karak warns that the fog is getting thicker, but Shutra corrects him, saying it's toxic gas from the mines. Felicia comments that the situation is worse than she imagined, and he suggests they proceed slowly. The orc questions the gas's color, asking His Highness if it shouldn't be yellow. Suddenly, Karak and Karma begin to choke, and Shutra turns around. The two companions fall to the floor. Felicia questions what is happening. She realizes the type of gas has changed and prepares a spell. Invoking the winds, the elf creates a protective circle around them. Her magic collides with the toxic gas. The interaction between the two elements causes an explosion. The force of the impact hurls the group members backward. Shutra calls out Felicia's name. Then, the entire corridor trembles with the force of the explosion. Amidst the dust, the whole group is scattered on the floor. From the dust, three shadowy figures with sharp teeth reveal themselves. One of the creatures prepares to attack the fallen prince. The creature lunges forward with its mouth open to attack. Lying on the ground, Shutra identifies them as General Kashubal's assassins. Then a shield emerges from his arm, surprising the monster. The shield intercepts the creature's blow. He then advances in a spinning motion against the enemies. A voice from the shield praises its master's performance, but Shutra tells it to shut up. The attack hits all three adversaries at the same time. One of the creatures reacts as it's struck. The monster is thrown backward by the force of the impact. Shutra stands up, now firmly wielding the shield. He observes the defeated creatures and comments that they used a rather potent poison. Removing his mask, the prince states that he almost put himself in danger, and his resistance to poisons increases. The ceiling of the corridor suddenly begins to shake and collapse. He looks up as the debris falls, questioning what is happening now. Seeing a huge stone slab falling, he orders Greenwind to protect the rest of the group, and the entity confirms the command. Shutra decides they need to get out of there and activates his dragon's blood. He then scoops Felicia into his arms. With great speed, he crosses the crumbling corridor. Then he spots what he was looking for. It was the entrance to the Thunder Fortress. Greenwind's shield expands to contain the debris. The entity warns its master to hurry, as the situation is abnormal. Shutra tries to hold back the rubble falling on Karak. He asks the orc to wait for him, promising he'll be right back. Carrying his companions, he takes them to a safe place. He manages to get everyone safely in front of the entrance, but as he prepares to rescue Karak, he notices something. The passage they came through completely collapses. Shutra screams Karak's name. Greenwind asks its master to calm down, but he orders it to get out of the way, as Karak is still inside. Greenwind asks its master if he doesn't have the spell he used last time on the Engel Plains. Then Shutra remembers that he possesses that ability. He summons the king's knights, breaking the space in front of him. Karak emerges from the portal that opens in midair. The orc falls to the ground, and the prince calls out to him. Behind them, the rock slide continues. Fortunately, Karak doesn't seem to be seriously injured. This is a relief for the young prince. He wonders what happened and about those strange creatures he never saw in Night Saga. Nearby, Felicia and another companion begin to cough. Shutra decides he needs to put out the most urgent fire first. He needs to detoxify them before it's too late. But dozens of shadowy creatures emerge from the shadows. He laments the situation they're in. A whole swarm of them appears, and one of the monsters attacks him from behind. Shutra turns and hits the creature with an explosive punch. The monster is sent flying while the others watch. He lands on the ground, complaining that the situation is a pain in the ass, as if he weren't busy enough already. Two of the creatures advance towards him. The prince challenges them to come all at once, as he has no time to waste. A swarm of creatures rushes forward to attack Shutra. He readies his fist for a counterattack. With a leap, he smashes the ground, sending the monsters flying with the force of the explosion. Then, he unleashes a sweeping blow against the remaining enemies. The attack hits several creatures at once. Shutra moves quickly amidst his adversaries. He releases his power against the swarm. Felicia slowly opens her eyes. The prince extends his hand to her, asking if she's okay, and she whispers his name. Surrounded by the bodies of the creatures, He helps her recover as she questions what happened. He smiles and tells her not to worry, as nothing major occurred. After the detoxification, the group begins the assault on the fortress, aiming for the control room, which can only be reached by one of two paths. One path was long with few traps, while the other was a shortcut riddled with them. Felicia asks Shutra which path he will take, and he considers that the longer path would be the safe option. The group advances together down the corridor. Shutra realizes it's no time to take it easy. Karak asks about a noise, and the prince explains it's the sign that the most important facility in the ruins is under attack. This means someone else is trying to conquer the dungeon, leaving Felicia surprised. Then, Shutra orders Karak to raise his shield and take the lead. He assures the orc that nothing will happen if he just trusts and follows his orders. A dragon head trap on the wall fires a projectile. Karak positions himself at the front and blocks the attack with his shield to protect everyone. He is pushed to the edge of a pit filled with spears. Then, the orc charges forward, blocking a volley of arrows with his shield. More traps are activated along the corridor. Karak breathes heavily after overcoming the obstacles. Shutra praises his companion's good work, but he yells that he almost died. Thanks to Karak's effort, the group quickly reaches a large door, the entrance to the control room. One of the companions notes that the gargoyles that should be guarding the place aren't there, and Felicia agrees. Shutra suggests they go inside to see what's happening, and the doors begin to open. The group enters the control room and is met with the scene. Shutra points to a figure, and Felicia confirms what he's seeing. She explains it must be the last lord of the Thunder Fortress city, who stayed behind to operate the fortress and allow the dwarves to escape. At that moment, one of the companions draws Felicia's attention to something strange in the room. It was a large, dark sphere positioned in the center of the room. Felicia wonders if the dwarves made it, and Shutra suggests they might need a key to activate it. He finds a key hanging from the skeleton's neck. With the key in hand, Shutra approaches the sphere. As he touches the key to the object, it begins to react. The sphere activates, surprising the prince and Felicia. Dozens of screens materialize around them, displaying various images. Shutra marvels at the dwarves' technology, questioning how far ahead of their time they were. A sudden sound startles the entire group. One of the companions asks Karak to look at one of the screens. The image shows that a battle is happening not far from there. Karak recognizes the creatures fighting the gargoyles, and Shutra confirms they are the same ones he faced. The prince concludes that these beings are the ones attacking the fortress, and wonders what their objective is. Then, Karak points to the screen and questions if the giant creature that appears is a dragon. Shutra looks at the image and recognizes what is being shown. The screen reveals a large spear embedded in the creature's back. He realizes he has finally found it. It was the masterpiece of the Dragon Slayer series, the dragon-slaying spear, Ascalon. Black Dragon Partisan was greedy and wicked, being the most active in the war against the Dwarven Kingdom. He and his legion attacked the Thunder Fortress relentlessly until they finally breached the outer wall. After invading the fortress, Partisan unleashed his full power, but that was his fatal mistake. A single moment of carelessness, born from his overwhelming arrogance, created an opening. Tiny Spark, the fortress's strongest warrior, did not miss this opportunity, and plunged the spear Ascalon into Partisan's chest. But with the dragon's death, its legion went into a frenzy, forcing the dwarves to abandon the fortress and flee. Thus, the Thunder Fortress became a vast tomb, where Partisan and countless dwarves were buried together. Karak confirms that the dragon is Partisan, and what's stuck in its chest is Ascalon, and Shutra agrees. The screen continues to show the unfolding battle. If they are fighting there, Shutra concludes it's plausible that those dark creatures are after Ascalon. Felicia declares that they will not allow the enemies to achieve their goal after attacking them. The prince asks her if there's any way to control the guardian gargoyle, but Felicia says there's nothing they can do. A guardian golem raises a hammer. It turns out someone else is already in control of it. The golem advances and smashes its enemies with the hammer. Felicia deduces that before dying, the fortress lord transferred all authority to the dwarven golem, as it was the highest-ranking guardian. She suggests they wait to see what happens, since the situation doesn't look favorable, but Shutra refuses the idea. He states that in fact, this is their chance. The prince explains that there are too many uncertain variables to just stand by and wait. Then, he asks the group to stay there and runs towards the battle, promising to be back soon. Shutra advances across the battlefield, passing the gargoyles while following a map. He believes that if he can get Ascalon first, they can profit regardless of the battle's outcome. If the Guardians win, they can hunt the remaining enemies, and if the enemies win, they can assess the situation to either fight or flee. He checks the map, and realizes he's almost at his destination. The prince locates Partisan on the map. He comments on the map's convenience as he runs, but a giant golem appears in his path. The golem attacks him with a powerful blow. He manages to dodge just barely as the golem smashes the ground. Shutra tells the golem to stop, saying he doesn't want to fight it right now. Suddenly, one of the golem's legs begins to shatter. The giant golem turns to face its attacker. It looks down, confused by the damage to its own leg. Suddenly, the golem perceives an attack coming its way. Shutra arrives flying on his shield, and Greenwind scolds him for using a nickname. The prince insists that shortening names is the trend, but the entity says it doesn't care for that kind of trend. Then he approaches the dragon's body where the spear is embedded. The young man lands near his objective. He approaches the dragon-slaying spear, Ascalon, commenting that it's even more impressive in person. Then he grabs the weapon and gives thanks for the spear. But when he tries to pull it, the spear doesn't move. He uses all his strength, but can't remove the weapon. The prince wonders why the spear is so heavy. He then decides to invest all his remaining points into strength. The golem watches from a distance as he finally manages to remove the weapon. With a final cry of effort, the spear comes loose from the dragon's back. Shutra slams the spear on the ground, releasing a wave of energy. The force of the impact sweeps across the battlefield, sending the creatures flying. Shutra's group watches the scene from a distance through the monitoring screens. A hooded figure watches everything from the shadows. He now wields Ascalon, the masterpiece of the Dragon Slayer series, forged with the determination of all dwarves. With the weapon in hand, the prince states that he has finally achieved his goal. But behind him, the skeletal remains of the dragon Partisan begin to rise again. The hooded figure creates an orb of power in his hand. He inserts it into the dragon's skull. The energy spreads through the bones, reanimating the creature. Shutra wonders how Partisan, who died hundreds of years ago, could be there. He then turns upon noticing a hooded figure in the distance. He asks who the man holding the sphere is. Shutra reacts and quickly raises his staff in a defensive stance, but a giant creature charges and knocks him to the ground. The beast prepares to launch an attack from its mouth. Shutra looks up, trying to identify the attack that is forming. He questions if that could be the purple death energy. Partisan fires the attack towards the skeletons. The attack simply pulverizes the targets it hits. To defend himself, Shutra summons a large winged shield. He yells, wanting to know what is happening in this place. From atop the shield, he wonders why that is coming out of Partisan. The dwarven golem's hand appears and grabs Shutra along with his defense. The golem raises its hammer and attacks the skeletal dragon. Dwarven golem strikes Partisan's chest squarely with its hammer. Shutra wonders why they are suddenly fighting each other. Felicia arrives running with Karak and Karma, calling his name. She asks what happened, and the prince explains that someone revived Partisan with sorcery, but he doesn't know who or why. He confirms that this is the same purple death energy they encountered before on the Engel Plains. Shutra states they need to kill the dragon while it's still incomplete, but Felicia questions how they will manage to take it down. He theorizes that, being a zombie dragon, there must be a core controlling its mana flow. The young man then concludes that if they destroy that core, they can defeat it. Suddenly, the core in Partisan's chest begins to glow brightly. Shutra realizes something is wrong. He yells for everyone to get out of the way, as the dragon's breath is coming. The creature fires a powerful blast that destroys the ground in front of it. The attack tears through the hall and hits the castle wall. A huge hole is blown open in the structure, revealing the night outside. Partisan turns and looks down towards the group. Karak questions Shutra about the dragon being incomplete, and he admits he didn't expect it to be so strong. Shutra concludes that the longer the fight drags on, the stronger the dragon will become. He then reacts as his staff begins to transform. The weapon completely changes shape as runes envelop it. Shutra raises the spear Ascalon, now in its new form. Felicia and Karak watch, and she comments on the weapon's change. The prince asks Felicia to get the dragon's attention for a moment. He believes he might be able to put an end to this. Partisan fires a blast of fire from its mouth. Felicia casts a spell and orders the flames to fall back. Her projectiles hit the dragon's body in several explosions. The creature roars as Shutra prepares to advance. He claims he feels Ascalon's will and can end it all with a single blow, but the dragon fires a blast of energy in his direction. The attack collides with the ground and causes a huge explosion. Felicia and Karak scream the prince's name. Shutra supports himself on one knee amidst the rubble, holding his spear. He wonders if he moved too quickly as Partisan looms over him. Then the dragon smashes the ground with its claw. Shutra glances to the side as he notices a movement. Dwarven Golem suddenly appears and grabs the creature's arm. The dwarf golem charges its fist with energy, and then it lunges forward and unleashes a powerful punch into the dragon's chest. With its other arm, it prepares an open-handed strike. The attack hurls the creature backward, sending it crashing through the hall's wall. Partisan roars in response to the blow it received. Golem continues to fight the dragon outside the castle. The winged shield appears beside Shutra and asks if his master is all right. Felicia scolds him for saying he'd finish everything, and he apologizes without making excuses. She suggests they retreat, as the dragon is not something they can handle, but Shutra insists they can, and she tells him not to be stubborn in his condition. He admits that he was too hasty, and that the more urgent the situation, the more they should fall back. The prince asks for Felicia's help one more time. He stands up and promises that this time, he won't make any mistakes. Shutra turns and calls for Green Wind. He leaps onto the shield and uses it to propel himself forward. Shutra rides his shield toward the dwarf golem and partisan. He asks it to circle as much as possible so they won't be noticed. The dragon's tail strikes the golem and shatters part of its armor. Then, the creature prepares an energy attack in its mouth. Partisan fires the blast and completely obliterates the dwarf golem. The skeletal dragon's head emerges from the rubble. Felicia summons her flames and commands them to burn. A huge pillar of fire strikes Partisan, engulfing it completely, but the dragon's eye glows through the fire as it notices something. The creature is hit by multiple energy projectiles across its body. It turns in the direction of Einkel's attack. Then, the dragon roars and prepares another energy blast. Green Wind warns that now is the time, as the creature is distracted. Shutra runs across the ground toward his opponent. He activates the dragon's blood skill, and an energy flows around him. Shutra states that there's no need to rush, as it only needs to work once. The dragon's head appears before him. He says he'll do it just as Tiny Spark did long ago, needing only one hit. Then, Shutra launches an attack called Giant Piston that strikes the dragon from below. Felicia looks up and questions what that is. She observes that Shutra actually did it. The zombie dragon partisan falls defeated, and a notification confirms the victory. Shutra drops to his knees as several messages inform him that his level has increased. He stands up, stating that this is the power of Ascalon after obtaining the Dragon Slayer title. An armored figure comments that he can't believe he actually took the creature down. Shutra turns at the sound of the voice and questions what was said. The man wonders if it was a mistake to just watch because the second prince didn't show up. Shutra recognizes him as the one who revived Partisan, but says it doesn't matter. The knight's weapon is enveloped in energy. He leaps to attack, saying he'll clean up what's left. Shutra questions the blue flames that block the knight's attack. The energy from the strike dissipates completely on the ground. The armored knight stands still amidst the remnants of the power. Shutra wonders what the hell just happened. He notes that his opponent's attack suddenly vanished. The armored figure looks ahead. Then, something large and heavy lands forcefully on the ground. A man steps firmly onto the soil amidst the dust. He turns to Shutra and states that he arrived just in time. The prince reacts as he finally recognizes the person before him. He identifies him as the Sword Lord. The man smiles and greets the ninth prince. Ishugard, the Sword Lord, was the protector of the Asura sanctuary and master to the demon king Mitra, comparable to an elder dragon. He was an extraordinarily strong figure who existed only in the backstory, with no chance of being encountered in the main plot. Even when Zephyr Ragnaros became the demon king, and the realm was invaded, he never revealed himself. Shutra recognizes him as a mysterious powerhouse, a monster from whom even the Demon King sought teachings. Ishugard, the Sword Lord, turns to Felicia and comments that the sixth princess has grown quite a bit. He then lifts her into the air, remembering she was just a brat the last time he saw her. Felicia demands he put her down immediately. He laughs and comments that seeing her throw a tantrum proves she's still a child. After being let down, she crosses her arms, embarrassed by the situation. The Sword Lord asks the ninth prince if he liked the gift, and Shutra remembers the dragon hide. Shutra thanks him, explaining that he managed to make good equipment thanks to it. Suddenly, the prince is hit by a blast of energy. The armored knight launches an overwhelming attack toward everyone. The energy strikes the rest of the group head-on. Karak asks why they're exploding, and Shutra yells that he doesn't know, but they need to get out of there first. An energy completely envelops the armored knight, and then the power explodes and dissipates amidst the wreckage. Partisan's body remains fallen in the destroyed city under the night sky. Ishugard complains about the noise as he forms a barrier around everyone. He asks if they are all okay, and Shutra thanks him, saying they are. The prince questions what their objective could be with an explosion coming out of nowhere. Shutra recalls the knight's words about the second prince not showing up. He realizes the man said something strange earlier. Since they didn't seem interested in Ascalon, he wonders what their real target was. Suddenly, he has a a revelation. He turns to Felicia and calls her name. The prince states that perhaps their target was the second prince. She turns and asks why he's suddenly saying that. He explains that the man with the spear said he watched because the second prince didn't appear, and Felicia questions if it was because of Zephyr. Shutra asks if it isn't strange that those guys, just like the ghouls, showed up right now. He says that half a month after General Kashabal's failure, it seems like they were waiting for someone. Felicia reacts to his conclusion. He believes they killed the general from the start to lure out the second prince. She agrees that it's plausible, as Zephyr was always assigned to missions like that one. Shutra asks why and who would target Zephyr, and Felicia notes that the enemy is meticulous. Ishigard finds the story interesting, and she scolds him, saying they're being serious, but he assures her that he is too. The prince changes the subject and asks what brings him here. He explains that the Demon King is very interested in Shutra, so he came to have a look. The Sword Lord states that the Demon King never acts without reason. He faces the prince and says that now he understands more or less what the king is thinking. Shutra wonders why the mood suddenly shifted. Then, Ishigard extends his hand and asks if the ninth prince would like to learn from him. Shutra and Felicia react to the unexpected question. He clarifies that he is not in a position to take a student, and that Shutra has already learned the Beast God Fist art. Felicia asks Shutra when he learned that, and he questions how Ishigard could know. Ishigard explains that besides the Beast God Fist art, there are many types of energies mixed within his body. He observes that these powers do not repel each other, but embrace one another to the point where their mutual coexistence fits perfectly. Anyway, the Sword Lord says he has taken an interest in the prince and would like to pass on some of his insights. Shutra reflects, as aside from the Demon King Mitra, the Sword Lord had never been the first to offer his teachings. Seeing no reason to refuse, he bows and humbly asks for his instruction. Ishigard touches Shutra's shoulder and begins the transfer of his teachings. The prince identifies that this is the essence of the Sword Lord. He notes that the experience is different from when he learned the Beast God Fist art. The Sword Lord's essence fills every corner of his body. He simultaneously acquires the Asura cultivation techniques of wind, mountain, and lightning. Ishigard comments that the speed at which he acquires the techniques is faster than he expected. Suddenly, the distinct powers collide within him. The reaction of the forces throws Ishigard back from the impact. Felicia and Karak scream Shutra's name. The Sword Lord questions if what's happening is even possible. The two forces begin to merge into a single spiral. The Asura cultivation technique harmonizes with the Beast God Fist art, and his skills evolve. A column of power erupts from the castle tower. Shutra floats in the sky, enveloped by the result of the fusion. He opens his eyes, having acquired the SS rank martial art, the Asura Divine Fist. Shutra lands with difficulty on a ruined rooftop. Karak asks the Sword Lord what happened, and he explains that he only intended to teach the Asura cultivation technique. He continues, saying that Shutra fused the Beast God Fist art and the cultivation technique into one, leaving Felicia surprised. The Sword Lord adds that he did this unconsciously, as the only SS rank martial art in Night Saga was that of the hero Locke. But now, the Beast God Fist art has evolved into the Asura Divine Fist strike, on the same level as the hero's sword art. Ishigard tells Shutra that he is a much greater figure than he imagined. He states that he won't interfere, nor does he need an explanation, as what interests him is the prince himself. Then, the Sword Lord asks if he has named the technique yet. Shutra stands up and confirms that he has, calling it the Asura Divine Fist Strike. Ishigard comments that it's a simple but good name, and advises him to keep what happened a secret. He explains that there's no need to increase the scrutiny and caution of the royal court, and Shutra agrees that it would be for the best. The Sword Lord says they've finished what they came for, and that now all that's left is to pack up, leaving Felicia confused. He points to Partizan's body and suggests they devour it before the expedition team arrives. Ishigard proposes dividing it into 3 parts and asks what they plan to do, and Shutra suggests leaving it at the forge in the Demon King's castle. The older man suggests entrusting the materials to an acquaintance of his, for whose skill he personally vouches. Ishigard asks if he has ever heard of someone named Amida. Felicia says it's the first time she's heard the name, but Shutra shouts Amida Ignatia. He describes her as the greatest blacksmith in the demon realm, and Ishigard realizes the prince knows her. Shutra confirms, as finding her was a true secret event in Night Saga. Amida Ignatia was sometimes a man and other times a woman. There were rumors that she was a mage who could transform, or that it was a name shared by an entire clan. The Sword Lord is pleased that he doesn't need to explain. He offers to tell them where she has been lately. As he turns to leave, the Sword Lord warns that she changes residence frequently, and that they should go soon. He guarantees that if they mention his name, they will get an audience at least once. Shutra excitedly thanks the Sword Lord for the incredible gain in such a short time. They rest, and then thoroughly search the treasure chamber. Next, They go to the archives at Felicia's insistence. She guides him hastily, ignoring Shutra's complaints about the dust in the place. Felicia shows a book to Delia, commenting on how well the records are preserved. Felicia admires the meticulousness of the dwarves, and Shutra notes that she's having fun. He wonders how old this archive room is. Then he notices records preserved on a kind of stone tablet on the floor. Shutra crouches down and picks up the artifact to examine it more closely. He holds the tablet, commenting that the image looks familiar to him. One side seems to show Ankle and Enkidu, along with 6 elder dragons. Then he focuses on the opposite side to identify the other figure. The word conquer appears along with the image of a woman. She holds a sphere and states that all will kneel before him. Shutra reacts to the vision he just had. He looks at the figure on the tablet and questions the word conquest. Then, the prince wonders why that woman is there. Shutra crouches down, reflecting that this must be a painting over 1,000 years old. He holds the tablet and wonders what kind of connection 4 people and 6 elder dragons could have to be gathered together. Suddenly, Einkel appears and asks what has made him so serious. Shutra is startled by her appearance, and she invites him to come over for a moment. She claims that she thinks she did something worthy of praise, leaving him confused. Enkel guides him, floating through the archive corridors. She leads him to a book and confirms that it's what he's thinking. The book is a record of the Elder Dragons, and he flips through it. Each of the Elder Dragons had a nickname that suited their personality and characteristics, such as Enkidu, the Tyrant of Destruction, and Einkel, the Gentle Mother. There was also Quian, the Wise, who was wise and thoughtful, and Kaltine, the warrior, who was fierce and intense. However, contrary to his fierce nature, he was closer to ice than fire, a cold flame. Kaltine was a silent warrior who did not draw his sword easily, but his ferocity would burn the world to ashes. Shutra realizes the records are mostly about Kaltine, including his legend and the location of his lair. Then he has a sudden revelation as he reads the information. Shutra asks about the mark on the map, identifying the location as the Sun Lake. He would never have imagined that an elder dragon with a fire attribute would have its lair under a lake. Now he understands why the veterans couldn't find him, and Enkel asks if he isn't going to praise her yet. Suddenly, Shutra notices something about that place. The map shows that the lake is not far from Amida's residence, near the spider forest. He comments that it's also near the lycanthrope region, which works out perfectly for finding Caitlin and Chris. The prince pats Enkel's head and congratulates her on a job well done. He thinks that if everything goes well, the next leg of the journey will be a complete set of gifts for him. They stayed for 4 days at Thunderdoom Fortress. Felicia's passion was impressive, as she remained in the archives until the day of their departure without showing any signs of fatigue. Shutra also spent most of his time in the archives looking for information on the Elder Dragons, but found nothing besides Kaltine. Still, there was a small consolation with the promotion of the King's Knights. Karak grew stronger during this time. Shutra asks him if he feels like he's gotten stronger. In response, Karak demonstrates his power with a punch. Karak claims that all the hard work the prince put him through was worth it. The next morning, a new day begins at the Demon King's castle. A new mission plan sent by Felicia arrives for the king. Along with the plan, a report informs that General Kashabal's death was a trap for Zephyr. Ready to leave, Shutra announces that they should go now, but Felicia asks him to wait. She asks if they can't look around a little longer, as there's still so much she hasn't seen. But Shutra refuses, reminding her that the Sword Lord said to find Amita quickly before she disappears. He rushes Felicia into the carriage, saying they have no time to waste. With everyone on board, Shutra tells Karak they can go. Karak guides the carriage out of the fortress. Inside the carriage, Shutra reflects on the dangers and rewards of the mission, looking forward to Caitlin's reaction to his new technique. He wants their reunion to happen soon. 3 days later, a new expedition team is formed to investigate the tracks of those who targeted Zephyr. And Zephyr himself, the party directly involved, steps forward to take command. He carefully observes a drawing of a dragon. 3 figures are introduced, starting with famine. Next, death is revealed. And finally, war shows herself. But Zephyr continues to look up. He questions the identity of the woman in the engraving. Elsewhere, a volcano erupts. A colossal creature rises from amidst the lava. Then, the giant being gives the order to begin. The Knight of Conquest appears. Shutra fires a flaming arrow at his training partner. Then he concentrates to create a small flame in the palm of his hand. The projectile hits Chris squarely and sends him flying back, as Karak comments that he's never seen training like that. Karak wonders if Shutra won't end up getting hurt, but Felicia states that surprisingly, he's fine. Next, Shutra uses healing magic on himself. His skill and mana control levels increase, leaving him exhausted. He takes a deep breath and prepares to try again. Karak insists that this isn't normal, but Felicia says his magic is improving and it's best to leave him be for now. They trained at night and traveled during the day, crossing the lycanthrope territory to reach their destination. Suddenly, Felicia orders the carriage to stop, and Shutra looks outside to see what's wrong. 2 guards block the road and warn them that the path is closed, telling them to turn back. The guard explains that it's an official matter of the lycanthrope royal family and demands they leave the area. Felicia gets out and finds it strange for it to be a royal matter in the middle of nowhere, but the guard insists she leave. She approaches and demands they open the path, as she needs to find the person in charge of the operation. The guard then asks if she considers herself some kind of royalty, and Felicia simply confirms that she is. The guard is left speechless, so Felicia repeats that yes, she is. She faces the newcomer and confirms her identity again. They are taken into a military camp set up in the forest. An elf approaches with Chris and asks what Felicia and Shutra are doing there. Felicia replies that she should be the one asking what they're doing blocking the road. Chris mentions hearing that Shutra turned the Demon King's castle upside down and wants to know what he's been up to. Shutra smiles and says it's perfect timing, as he was just about to show everyone. Suddenly, everyone looks toward a swift movement coming in their direction. The elf charges at high speed and throws a punch at the prince. She moves quickly, ready for the attack, but Shutra prepares to counter with his own punch. The 2 fists collide, creating a huge impact. The force of the explosion throws the elf and the other soldiers backward. She lands and notices his technique is different, asking what it is. Shutra reveals that this is the Asura divine fist strike. Felicia explains that Shutra combined the beast god art with the Asura cultivation technique, and Chris wonders how the Sword Lord taught him. The elf asks if she can learn the strike, but Shutra apologizes, saying he can't teach it at the moment. Chris comments that a martial art that not even its creator can teach is absurd, and Shutra asks if that was a compliment. He reflects that Shutra's growth rate is terrifying, and decides he needs to train even harder to not be left behind. Chris says that now that they've seen how much Shutra has grown, it's time to talk about them. Once inside the tent, he warns that everything he's about to say must be kept secret, and Felicia questions the reason for such seriousness. Then he reveals that a prisoner locked on the lowest floor of the Grey Tower has escaped. Shutra remembers that the Grey Tower is the prison where they keep only the most dangerous criminals. His name is Gerard Moonlight, and Chris reveals that he is their maternal uncle. Shutra questions them having an uncle, but Chris explains that Gerard was imprisoned 20 years ago. He was originally a powerful warrior of the royal family who would have inherited the throne if he hadn't gone mad. In his endless quest for strength, Gerard resorted to all sorts of heretical methods and eventually lost his mind. His madness became a disaster, and hundreds of lycanthropes were sacrificed just to subdue him. Chris concludes that, luckily, it all ended within the palace, allowing the incident to be covered up internally. According to the report, Gerard seems to have headed east, but he lost half of his strength in the last battle, so there's no cause for concern. Shutra notes that east is the opposite direction from where they are, and asks if they know how Gerard escaped. Chris replies that they are still investigating, but it seems he had outside help. The situation is reminiscent of an event from the game Night Saga, where it was possible to free Gerard to weaken the lycanthropes. Meanwhile, night falls over the forest under the full moon. A lycanthrope guard is grabbed by the neck. The attacker orders him to speak if he wants to live. He lifts the guard into the air, choking him. Then, he interrogates him about the location of the moonlight herb. Shutra finds himself in a state of confusion. Suddenly, he's in an unknown place, facing an imposing woman floating before him. He identifies her as the Knight of Conquest. Then he wonders what is happening and where he is. A dark vortex opens in the space above them. Shutra watches the anomaly closely. From within it, he recognizes the figure of Famine. Then Shutra suddenly wakes up in his bed, gasping for air. He sits up, questioning what that was, and the hostility he felt. He also wonders why the word famine came to mind. Karak bursts into the room and warns the prince that the situation is bad. Shutra gets up as his companion shouts that the enemy has invaded. The orc reports that a man with a scar is slaughtering the soldiers with his bare hands. From the description, Shutra realizes who it is. The intruder is Gerard Moonlight. Chris and Caitlin come across the fallen soldiers. Shutra and Karak arrive running, and the prince calls out to Chris. The young man questions him about why Gerard is there, since he was supposed to have fled east. Then he demands that Chris stop hiding information and tell him the whole truth. Shutra asks what the real reason for their visit to this place was. Caitlin reveals that the reason for their trip is the moonlight herb. She explains that their original goal was the herb, and they only learned of Gerard's escape later. The moonlight herb is an item with a monstrous healing effect, capable of reviving someone on the brink of death. Shutra realizes that Gerard also came for the herb to recover half of his lost strength. Suddenly, Caitlin notices a beam of light in the sky and recognizes it as Felicia's magic. Sparks fly through the air near one of the camp's tents. Felicia raises a massive wall of fire to stop the enemy's advance. She keeps her hands outstretched to sustain the barrier of flames, but Gerard walks right through the flames and charges directly at her. Felicia grits her teeth, realizing her attack had no effect. Shutra attacks Gerard from above, intercepting him before he can reach Felicia. The prince then lands beside her with a shield and asks if she's okay. Gerard recovers from the blow and lands with a punch to the ground. He glares at the newcomers and recognizes them as the children of Elaine Moonlight. Caitlin and Chris charge forward together to attack Gerard. She calls him a traitor and demands he surrender without a fight, but Gerard grabs her and comments on how much she looks like her mother. He slams her violently into the ground as Chris tries to intervene. Chris transforms into a beast and attacks Gerard, screaming Caitlin's name. Gerard manages to grab the beast by the neck. He commands the creature to wither. The beast's body begins to wither in his hands. Chris falls to the ground, exhausted and back in his normal form. He tries to get up, but he has no strength. Shutra watches the scene and questions the true nature of that dark energy. Gerard reveals himself as the wielder of Famine's power, with a hooded figure floating behind him. He clenches his fist, concentrating the dark energy in his hands. With a single strike, he sends spikes of energy from the ground toward Chris. The attack hits Chris head-on, injuring him. Shutra runs with his shield to protect his companion, shouting his name. The prince realizes Gerard was never this strong in the game, but his opponent scolds him for being distracted. Then Gerard grabs Shutra by the neck. He lifts him off the ground with no difficulty. With a fixed gaze, Gerard commands Shutra to wither. The young prince resists his uncle's power with all his might. The impact of Shutra's fall creates a crater in the ground. Gerard throws him violently to the ground, but is surprised by a sudden resistance. The prince screams as the dark energy tries to consume him. His uncle extends his hand to finish the attack, but Chris appears and tells Gerard that he is his true opponent. He then unleashes a series of punches against his adversary. Gerard blocks the blows and questions him for not greeting his uncle first. Chris replies that the Gerard of the royal family died 20 years ago, and that he is just a fugitive. From a distance, Shutra grips the hilt of his sword. He activates the skill Under the King's Banner to strengthen his companion. Chris feels the power flowing through his body and wonders if this is Shutra's magic. With his new strength, he lunges at Gerard with a powerful burst of speed. Gerard notices that his nephew's movements have suddenly changed. Chris lands a devastating blow that sends his uncle flying toward the ground. The lycanthrope takes the full force of the punch as Chris unleashes all his strength in the attack. A massive explosion of energy throws Chris and Caitlin backward. Felicia can't see anything through the dust, but Shutra reassures her, saying that they're winning. The two siblings attack Gerard together, delivering coordinated strikes against him. Gerard faces them and acknowledges that they are truly Elaine's children. He then decides he no longer needs to go easy on them. A new transformation begins, and Gerard becomes a bestial creature. His new form charges forward to attack. He strikes Chris with a swipe of his claws. The attack hits him squarely and throws him to the ground. The young lycanthrope feels the force of the blow. Caitlin also falls to the ground, seriously injured. Gerard advances on his nephew and swears he will kill him. He attacks Chris again with his sharp claws. The blow sends him flying far away through the trees. Gerard leaps toward Chris, ready to finish him. A shield materializes to intercept the attack. Shutra appears with the protection and blocks Gerard's advance, surprising him. He shouts his companion's name. With Summon King's Knights, Karak appears behind the lycanthrope and attacks him with his spear. But Gerard blocks the blow with his arm, throwing the orc backward. Meanwhile, Shutra concentrates energy in his hands for a new attack. He readies his fist to deliver a powerful blow. Using Giant Piston, he hits Gerard square in the chest. The attack invokes the secret art of the beast god's fist. He unleashes the wild wolf's fist strike. Gerard retaliates with a powerful blow that slams the prince into the ground. Karak watches the scene and calls out to the prince. The lycanthrope faces Shutra and comments that he's not bad at all. Even after taking the hit, the young man gets up and faces his opponent. He coughs, feeling the impact of the last blow. Gerard approaches Shutra and warns him that this time, he will really kill him, but the young prince simply replies, no. He prepares to use the secret art of the beast god's fist, stating that now it's his turn. The lycanthrope reacts with surprise upon seeing the prince use the same technique. Shutra unleashes the wild wolf's fist strike directly at his opponent. After learning the skill, the prince warns that now it's his uncle's turn to taste it. Gerard wonders how Shutra knows the wild wolf fist strike. The prince prepares another attack with his hands. Then he strikes him with the explosion fist. The lycanthrope withstands the blow. Shutra finishes with a kick that sends him flying into the air. He lands and remarks that his target was the head. Gerard counterattacks with his dark energy. Energy spikes emerge from the ground, heading toward the prince. Suddenly, A massive explosion erupts in the forest. Shutra protects himself with his shield, not understanding what happened. He observes the trail of destruction and wonders if his uncle fled. With the battle over, his level increases twice, and he considers the problem solved for now. Shutra runs to Felicia and asks about Caitlyn's condition, but the situation is dire. Felicia explains that her injury is too severe, and magic won't be enough to heal her in time. The prince feels a sharp pain in his chest and turns around. Shutra realizes that the inside of Caitlyn's body is completely ruined, even though her external wounds have already healed. Felicia approaches, worried, but he tells her not to worry, and asks her to give an item to Caitlyn in his place. Then Chris appears and hands Felicia a box, instructing her to feed both Caitlyn and Shutra with its contents. She opens the box and is surprised by what's inside. The item is the legendary Moonlight Herb. With both of them on the ground, Felicia prepares to use the herb while Chris and Karak watch. She holds the flower, which begins to release its power. Then the herb magically splits into two parts. The two halves float toward Shutra and Caitlyn, who begin to absorb them. Caitlyn's body emanates a strong energy as she recovers. Felicia watches and comments on the energy coming from their bodies. Suddenly, a wolf's form manifests from Shutra and ascends to the heavens. Chris reveals that although he's never seen it himself, he's heard the story of the Moonlight Herb's legend. The legend tells that the primordial wolf king gathered the lycanthropes and founded a nation. But one day, the red dragon Castian invaded his territory and was defeated by the Wolf King after a 7-day battle. But the Wolf King's heart was also destroyed, and death awaited him. In his desperation, he found a white flower and ate it on instinct. That flower, which contained the essence of moonlight, became his new heart, and he adopted the surname Moonlight. But that was the first and last time, as for generations, no other lycanthrope achieved the same feat. And that became the legend of the Moonlight Herb. Chris observes the scene and realizes the legend is unfolding right before his eyes. And the most incredible part is that it's all happening to Shutra, who is of a different race. His protagonist-like physique reacts to the power of the Moonlight Herb. He now possesses two hearts, and with that, he also gains 2 starting points. Shutra then begins to open his eyes. He awakens to find Caitlyn sleeping beside him. He then sits up, startled, calling her name. He looks around, wondering what's happening and where he is. Next, he stares at the door of the luxurious room. The door opens and 3 guards enter the room. A woman surrounded by guards asks if he slept well last night. She calls him by his name, 9th Prince Shutra Ignas. Shutra reacts with surprise, as he's seen that face countless times in the game. He identifies her as the 4th Queen, Elaine Moonlight, the biological mother of Chris and Caitlyn. She thanks him for her children surviving because of him, but the prince says he only did what he had to do. Elaine states there's no need for modesty and that he did something worthy of praise. She decides that's enough small talk and gets straight to the point. Then the queen asks him if he intends to become the Demon King. Shutra is speechless and asks what she means by that. Elaine realizes the idea had never crossed his mind, which makes sense considering his stance until now, but she warns him that his position has changed, and he'd better start thinking about it. The queen then advises him to reflect on what kind of actions would benefit him most from now on. Back in his room, he realizes he's been asleep for 4 whole days. Ankle confirms he slept for 4 days, and that she took care of him the entire time. She goes on to explain that they are in a village of the lycanthrope royal family. The reason he and Caitlyn were in the same bed was to enhance the healing effect, and Shutra questions what that effect is. Einkel asks if her master doesn't remember using the Moonlight Herb. Shutra checks his skills and realizes he did indeed use the herb, gaining a new passive ability. He reflects that a new power has been added to his existing strength, as if a second energy core has formed. Enkel explains that, according to Chris, the closer the two are, the more their life force will be activated, and she suggests he hold her hand, so he places his hand on Caitlyn's. Energy flows between them the moment he touches her. Shutra looks at his hand and realizes she was right. Enkel explains that, thanks to the Moonlight Herb, the two are now connected, just like her and the prince. Later, walking through the halls, Chris reports that no one knows if Gerard is alive or dead.
He says there were casualties during the pursuit, but they found parts of Gerard's body and will keep searching until they can confirm his death. Chris then changes the subject and mentions his mother made him an offer. He admits that while he's strong, he isn't overwhelmingly powerful, being at Sylvan's level at best. The power gap between him and the second prince is so vast it's not even worth mentioning, but Chris believes Shutra can catch up to them and become the Demon King.
The prince listens to his companion's words. Chris adds that, unlike him, Shutra can gain the support of other races, and he also has the Sword Lord's backing. If his public merits continue to pile up, Even the Gandharvas, who are currently in confinement, might be granted amnesty. Shutra is surprised and wonders what they did to deserve confinement. Chris advises him to think about it, as there's a huge difference between considering something and completely ignoring it. The young prince becomes thoughtful, looking out the window and pondering the idea of becoming the Demon King. Meanwhile, in a carriage, a new conversation begins. The captain of the Blood Wolf Squadron, Ludwig Moonlight, asks Her Majesty if she truly believes the Ninth Prince has the potential to become the Demon King. Elaine states that she knows the Demon King, and there's always a reason behind his actions. He wouldn't do something on a whim, and perhaps he saw something in the Ninth Prince that they missed. Ludwig suggests they are father and son, but Elaine considers him naive for not understanding the situation. She explains that the Demon King would rejoice if his son killed him to inherit the throne, as it would mean the birth of a stronger successor. Ludwig admits it might be an unnecessary risk, but a future with the Ninth Prince as the Demon King would be the best for them. He concludes that the demon world is ruled by the strongest, and Elaine wholeheartedly agrees. She reflects on this fact, admitting the situation both disturbs and pleases her. In the forest, a group of lycanthropes searches for someone, stating he couldn't have gone far in his condition. One of the scouts suddenly notices something. They finally find Gerard leaning against a tree. A shadowy figure approaches and says it seems he's had time to sort out his thoughts. The entity then questions if he will accept the offer now. Gerard extends his hand, which is enveloped by dark energy. Hunger floats above the lycanthropes and commands them to wither. The lycanthropes' bodies fall to the ground, as Gerard stands behind them. Gerard finally gives in and tells the entity to take what it wants. A sinister smile appears in the darkness, announcing it's time to start over. The shadowy figure prepares to achieve a different ending than the last one. A few days later, Caitlin finally wakes up, with Shutra and Chris by her side. Because of Gerard, Chris had returned to the main palace, and the next day, the group set off for the Spider Forest. Robin, the guide, warns that from the Twin Bridges onward, they'll need to dismount their horses and proceed on foot. Shutra asks the guide, a boar lycanthrope, what the Spider Forest is like, and he replies that it's a very peaceful place. Robin describes the forest as a peaceful place with no beasts or monsters, and Shutra agrees, though he feels something is off. But when they arrive, they find the forest littered with the bones of giant creatures. Robin wonders what happened here, but Shutra states he knew the place wouldn't be peaceful. He then looks out at the forest and questions what the problem will be this time. The group finds themselves surrounded by a dark, twisted forest. Einkel says she can feel the power of the forest's guardian spirit, but it's extremely weakened. Shutra asks Robin about the spirit, and he confirms there are legends about a giant spider living in the center of the forest. The prince reflects on the mention of the forest's center. He instructs Karma to inform the lycanthropes of the situation, and she leaves immediately. Einkel warns that she senses powerful magic in the center of the forest. She fears that if this magic is destroyed, something terrible will happen to the forest. Later, the group camps around a fire. Shutra asks what happens if a guardian spirit disappears, and Felicia explains there are two ways. Either the spirit is destroyed, or the source that manifested it disappears. Einkel, despite being small, is a high-level spirit, so she probably wouldn't be destroyed if her source vanished, but most guardian spirits would. Shutra concludes the forest spirit weakened because its source was damaged, and Felicia agrees that's the most likely explanation. Suddenly, she stops the conversation and looks up at the sky. Felicia asks if the color of the moon doesn't look strange. At that moment, Daphne emerges from the trees and attacks the group. Shutra tackles Daphne to the ground and wonders what's gotten into her. He grabs her by the arms and yells for her to wake up. Then the prince realizes his companions are also under attack. Karak is surrounded by small creatures and asks what's going on. Felicia unleashes a flash of light against the aggressors. The light hits the creatures and also Karak, who covers his face. She wonders what in the world is happening. Daphne explains it's because of the spirit of madness, leaving Felicia confused. The druid then casts a purification spell. The dark influence is expelled from the creatures' bodies. All those affected fall to the ground, finally freed from the control. Shutra holds Daphne in his arms and realizes they're back to normal. Karak asks what just happened, and Daphne says that for now, they need to find the cause. The group looks at the moon in the sky as the energy continues to spread. Karak hears a noise, and Daphne realizes the defenses have been brought down and something is happening. Einkel explains that illusion and reality are merging, as the spirit's power is so strong that it's no longer possible to distinguish what's real. Shutra braces for the approaching battle. The group is suddenly surrounded by a horde of shadowy monsters. He prepares to fight and orders everyone to get ready for combat. Shutra then charges forward and hits one of the monsters with a powerful punch. Karak and another warrior fight the creatures, while an elf joins the fray. The monsters attack from all directions as the group defends itself. Karak unleashes a series of blows against the creatures. He warns the prince that there are too many monsters for them to handle. Shutra asks Ankle to go up and share what's happening from above, and she agrees. The fairy flies high, observing the situation from a new perspective. She spots a giant firing an attack from a distance. Ankle watches the scene in surprise. She wonders if that's really a giant. The group gathers amidst the defeated monsters as the ground around them becomes corrupted. Karak wonders if the monsters are coming again, and Shutra questions what is happening. Then the horde of creatures suddenly turns and starts to move away. The elves report that they are retreating, and the prince comments that it's a relief for now. Suddenly, a noise in the forest catches Shutra's attention. He leaps back as a projectile hits a tree and demands to know who's there. Karak is also hit by one of the attacks. A dark clawed paw strikes the ground with force. Shutra then sees Daphne and a raccoon emerging from the bushes. The raccoon faces the prince and asks what he said. The creature questions if they can't see its greatness, leaving everyone surprised. He introduces himself as Amida, the artisan who protects the last flame.